I saw this panel once. It was some gaming show where the audience could ask questions about the process of submitting video games to publishers. It featured a guy whose job it was to approve and reject games based on demos brought to him by prospective developers. He explained that he would have to tell developers to stop giving him all the context and story for the demo. Didn't matter if this was a fantasy war or a slow burn survival horror or a high octane action shooter. He was testing the concept purely on the basis of the mechanics. If that demo was fun to play, it passed. If it wasn't, it failed. I mean, it sounds obvious, but people often seem to forget there's a balance to games. Like, make them fun and engaging, obviously, and if you want to create something seriously memorable, give it a story your player will never forget. But somewhere along the lines, companies seem to figure out that they could scrap all of that if they delivered said gameplay demo back to you in the form of like 15-minute matches, slapped some daily and weekly challenges onto it, and sold cosmetic sets for the price of actual games. No need for cohesion, structure, or memorability. Just, as always, this pursuit of content for the sake of content. Why make a brilliant 10-hour game when you could deliver a template that can, in theory, be playable and monetizable forever? Why make a little bit of something when you can infinitely shart out buckets of nothing? In the case of games like Overwatch and Marvel Rivals, where matches are matches because it's a win-lose scenario between teams of 5 or 6 composed of characters that can all be mastered and applied separately, I think stuff like that works, broadly speaking. There doesn't need to be a story for a skill-based competitive shooter, so live service elements can work well. But when the eyes of the market turned to the horror genre, well, it inspired me to make this video. So before we go any further, we need to set 2 baselines for today's discussion. The first one is, I will never use the phrase, sentiment, or similar of "it's fun with friends" to complement a game in this video. A power cut is fun with friends. A 25-hour flight delay can be fun with friends. Hey, a hangover is fun with friends. Friends make even the most broken experiences fun, so I won't use it to argue in favour of any of the games we're discussing today. I'm not so cynical as to call multiplayer games friend slot, but I still won't count it, especially if we're excusing criticisms. Second, we need to decide how to describe a live service template in a game. Mechanically, a live service template features go-again match-based gameplay, solo or in co-op with friends or strangers, even if the term match isn't always accurate. You begin in a lobby where you may be able to tweak your experience ahead of time with difficulty modifiers and loadouts. You ready up and you are matched either with other players or AI. Once in a match, you complete objectives until you are able to leave the match. You receive XP and/or in-game currency and return to the lobby where the cycle continues. This enables what we'll call infinite loop gameplay, basically a game intended to be played forever. Instead of having a start, middle, and end, the game consists of these 15-minute matches that can be replayed infinitely. A live service game does not need a battle pass, or whatever the game calls it, especially since more indie companies are jumping on the live service model. More amateur companies lack the legal expertise to be handling those kinds of rolling terms of service, the business expertise to be delivering consistently on associated promises and maximizing results, or simply the team size required to be consistently delivering the rewards promised in those updates and creating things players will want to buy. That said, a live service game does need to feel like a living, breathing organism. And when I say that, I mean it needs to cultivate the idea that you are missing out on an ever-changing environment by giving you daily and weekly tasks and seasonal events that award at minimum XP and a little "I was here in autumn 2018" trophy that you may or may not be able to display publicly for other players to see how you were present for something that they missed out on, so they better be present for future events. So TLDR, a live service game will be defined in this video as focused on match-based gameplay designed for infinite replayability, cultivating FOMO, fear of missing out, with daily, weekly, seasonal challenges and events. You might define it slightly differently, but for our purposes we need to be consistent. For example, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game, Destiny, and Overwatch all meet these specifics and more, whereas indie hit Lethal Company qualifies as match-based but features at time of writing no microtransactions or FOMO daily, weekly, and seasonal challenges, so we won't count it. Before we start, I just wanted to say, I've been complaining about my desk chair for a long time on stream. That's what I'm thinking. Also, I really want to replace this chair. Like, this broken ass chair, the handles come off. It's my brother's old one. The seat's all creaky and it screams when you sit on it, the arms hanging off, the footrest just straight up walked out on us one day. These big puffy gaming chairs always feel so poorly made and they break so easily. Thank God FlexiSpot showed up when they did, sending over their gorgeous C7 premium ergonomic office chair. It showed up fast, and knowing how awful I am at DIY, I begged some help from my dad and we got to work. Construction was fast, probably 20 minutes maximum between the two of us, and the instructions made it really quick and super easy. This chair has an adjustable tilt to keep your posture aligned, perfect lumbar support, an unobtrusive footrest, which I feel like a lot of major brands never seem to include with the chair, they always cost extra, and all the adjustment you'd expect from a fantastic quality office chair like this. Seffi was straight on that mesh seat, obviously. That's alright, Seth, I'll get my turn. FlexiSpot are currently celebrating their 9th anniversary with a huge sale, so between August 7th and August 19th, you could snag yourself one of these puppies for anywhere up to 50% off. Check out the FlexiSpot C7 chair and a horde of other goodies over at flexispot.co.uk, including standing desks and a very tempting waffleback chair I probably would have inquired about if I had the room for it. For more details on FlexiSpot and their 9th anniversary sale, check the link in the description below, and know that I love FlexiSpot so much that I didn't take a fee or any commission for this integration. I literally just asked for the chair. That's what this furniture is worth to me. I highly recommend it, and I recommend FlexiSpot to everybody because this desk furniture is second to none. Also, noticed anything new? I did get a new chair, I did. It's so comfortable and it's silent. It's no longer like, how bad was the creaking? How bad did the creaking used to be? I absolutely love FlexiSpot. Enjoy a risk-free 60-day return policy and a 5-year warranty. FlexiSpot also offers direct replacement of any damaged parts. Thank you very much, FlexiSpot, for sending over this chair to me. Again, highly recommend. Now, let's get on with the video. Today we'll be looking at 4 games: the Outlast Trials, Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, Phasmophobia, and Dead by Daylight. They all focus on match-based gameplay designed for infinite replayability, and they all feature at least daily and weekly tasks. Phasmophobia doesn't have a battle pass, and Ghostbusters isn't so much horror as it is horror light, but I think they'll make my point quite well. So before we get to the meat of why I am sick to the back fucking teeth of live service horror, I want to give you a rundown of what each of these games are about, and we'll keep it as brief as possible, but if you're already familiar with them, just use the chapter select to skip ahead in the video. First up is the Outlast Trials. I'm on record as loving the themes of this game and the way it tells its stories, bold-facedly critiquing the trials and tribulations of current-day America in a period of history that feels miserably relevant to much of that critique. I covered them in a video that a lot of barnacle brains didn't even click play on, but still stopped by to call me a mentally ill cultural Marxist cuck and to tell me to get back in the kitchen, and to be fair, I don't mind those critiques, but you do have to at least watch a bit of the video before you levy that judgment, and that's my compromise. As for the gameplay, well, we'll get there. Outlast Trials can be played in up to teams of 4. You begin your day in the lobby, the sleep room, a small communal space where you can play chess with strangers, arm wrestle, level up your abilities, try on different ridiculous outfits, and decorate your shabby, not-so-private dorm room. And when you're ready to embark on a trial, you interact with the monitor to select the one you want to play and the difficulty you want to play it on. Higher difficulties mean more enemies and occupational hazards. Highest difficulties mean enemies have those weird red meme eyes, hit for insane damage, and skid around the level like they're on Heelys. But also means more points, and points means slippers, the only upgrade you'll ever need. Each level is themed around a twisted, moralistic lesson imparted as a direct command. Kill the snitch, save the orphans, grind the bad apples. Although your objectives are simple, what you end up doing is often depraved and inhuman, usually ending in you mutilating and slowly killing victims implied to be your very sleep room cohorts. And if you want to understand more about how this game effectively satirizes fascism, check out my video, The Fascist Politics of Outlast Trials. The entire time you'll be pursued by prime assets, on-site psychopaths handpicked specifically for their knack for ruthless torture. These serve as your obstacles to success and the source of any scary chases, which up until this point were the staple of the Outlast series. Next, we have Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. In this game, you load up in your little ghost busting lobby, where you can choose to play a game as a buster, their words, sorry, or invade other people's games as a ghost. Since this game died basically on arrival and the developers gave up supporting it in 2024, you'll always matchmake with bots, which is good because I can't imagine queuing for a full lobby in this day and age. As a buster, you have a variety of contracts and tasks you can take on. Most of these can be completed in a matter of minutes. You'll enter one of a few randomly selected maps and usually wander around with your ghost detector equipment until one of your bot co-workers finds the ghost. At that point, you yank out the buster beam, tether the ghost, and put it in your ghost box. The rest are all in-contract contracts that reward you with XP for doing things you'd normally do, like catching ghosts. Throughout the process, you can complete optional objectives like consoling the increasingly panicked NPCs that litter the place, or by doing a certain amount of property damage, but more often than not you'll drop in, bag and tag, and leave with sometimes 16,000 XP for some inexplicable reason. If you're playing as the ghost, you'll be on the opposite side of affairs. You need to get in and haunt a location until some bar fills up to max without being caught by the busters. You do this by possessing objects, opening rifts, and menacing NPCs. At the end of each job, you return to the lobby to see which vest top your newly earned XP has gotten you, incrementally improve your gear, and pick your next tasks. Third on our list is indie darling Phasmophobia, which rose to prominence back during the pandemic, and is another game I spent a third of a video glazing a few years ago, back when the concept of co-op horror was brand new enough for me that I didn't see the flaws. Unfortunately, my goodwill has slowly eroded over the years as Phasmophobia continues to sit smugly in a state that feels as limited as the beta version I remember playing, occasionally dropping crumbs of content that skew madly in quality. In Phasmophobia, you'll load into your lobby, a large warehouse where you can mess around with your microphone settings, play hacky sack, and choose your loadout for the ghost hunt. Your friends may join you, or you can load in alone. You'll choose a map and your difficulty settings and then embark on your hunt. During your ghost hunt, you are to wander around whichever house, school, or prison you've dropped into until you find where the ghost is lurking. Depending on difficulty, timing, and your own player's sanity, the ghost may be aggressive. You have no HP. If the ghost finds you, you're instantly dead, and it can locate you if you're making any noise or have any electronic equipment switched on. Outside of dangerous ghost hunting periods, you need to find evidence as to the ghost type, of which there are something like 26 different ghosts, each with their 3 pieces of evidence, and, as you'll learn if you play on harder difficulties, some unique behaviour that only that ghost type will do. You'll also have in-match optional objectives, media to collect such as photos and sound recordings, and cursed objects to kill all of your friends with. Once you think you know the ghost type, you can circle it in your journal and buzz back off to the lobby where you'll be rewarded, even if you've walked away with like $4. Finally, Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight is similar to Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed because, outside of a few very specific situations, it's not so much horror as it is just horror themed. Dead by Daylight is like 1, 2, 3 Home, with extra steps, and also you can die. My most controversial take in this video is going to be that, on the whole, Dead by Daylight does the live service template the best of the 4 games we're going to look at today. If I explain why now, we will derail the momentum of this. Just put a pin in this for now and we'll get to it as we go. Once you're matched with your team, 4 survivors and 1 killer will drop into a randomly selected map. Around the map will be at least 7 generators. Survivors must fix 5 of them and escape through one of the 2 exit doors. Killers must kill the survivors before they can escape. Survivors have 2 HP, they can take 1 hit, at which point they'll start crying and leaving blood everywhere. If you hit them again, they go down. At this point, the killer can pick them up and carry them to the hook, and if they get hooked 3 times, they're out of the game. When you choose a role, survivor or killer, you can spend time in the lobby setting up your build. As a survivor, for example, you can pick perks that make you more or less of a nuisance if you want to spend more or less time in chases, whether you just want to get on with tasks or keep the killer busy so that your cohorts can hopefully get on with tasks on your behalf. As the killer, do you want perks that allow you to see your future victims across the map? Do you want perks that allow you to do more damage? Perks that mean you're an endgame powerhouse or an early bird? It's up to you. There's a lot more to this, obviously. Survivors can skip to their second hook if they're left out to dry too long. Killers can see scratch marks where survivors have been running, enabling them to track survivors more easily. Aura reading abilities allow survivors and killers to make more strategic decisions, etc., so on and so forth. A final survivor can escape through a hatch rather than risking exit gates if the killer doesn't close it first. Basements, extremely killer-sided areas of the map, can turn the tide of a match in a matter of minutes. Still, ultimately it's hide and seek in a horror-themed coat of paint. So, all solid premises, all legally distinct, every game a different experience, and yet why am I about to argue that they clash horribly with a live service format? The biggest problem with live service as a whole is that it demands a certain lack of depth. For a game to last forever and not be an MMO, which are an entirely different breed of things, you can't have a story with a beginning, middle, and end. Because even in the impossible circumstance that you did manage to craft a story that lasted forever, your players will quickly fatigue. Live service games can't really have stories at all. The most these games can muster is context. The who, what, when, where, and why, if that. And that might change throughout the life cycle of the game as it goes through its different season passes and eras and phases, but it's never going to be very detailed. It's never going to be something that you feel involved in, more a passive observer of. Live service games are built off the back of one single gameplay premise that is stretched out to infinity, with a few select maps, sometimes with variably generated tiles, sometimes always exactly the same map, fulfilling the same objectives, rinse and repeat. If the gameplay premise is good, great. If not, well. Our first problem is story, or lack thereof. Story will either be meaningfully absent, see Phasmophobia, or delivered to you as world-building snippets, audio that plays over gameplay, set dressing, and written text logs. Before you say, no, it's not unusual to have a game, especially games with smaller budgets, deliver important information to you with voiceovers, often as a cost-saving measure, like the introduction to Five Nights at Freddy's, which has an external character explain the premise via phone. But we're talking every piece of information about the world you're in being totally reliant on collectible information. Although written text logs can be a nice treat in any game, usually used to deliver non-mandatory information for players who are interested in learning about the world, text logs in live service games are often relied upon to tell you everything, especially when it comes to major plot points. Information is barfed at you in lieu of any proper storytelling, which is a choice, sure, but narrative potential is totally lost. It's the equivalent of checking the fandom wiki between matches. The entity of Dead by Daylight and the prime assets of Outlast Trials, for example, are characters so basic they may as well be props until you start digging through the mountains of written extras where you can learn more about their origin, motivations, and methods. The Outlast Trials may have its prime assets like Leland Coyle and Mother Gooseberry spouting off occasionally interesting expository lines during trials, but the real meat of their stories is confined to confidential documents that litter the trials at random. It will take tens of hours to find them all. Some of them are interesting, none of them are mandatory. I only actually read them when it came to writing my video on the Outlast Trials, but even then I just tracked them down online and read them there just to be sure that I actually had all of the information in front of me as I was making my script. I check the Files tab on my Outlast Trials game when I want to wipe the notification that I found new files. The entity of Dead by Daylight is a huge spider-like creature that most players will only encounter when it blocks the generator they were working on or kills them on their final hook. How many casual players know that it is a living, breathing, malevolent god that keeps survivors trapped in an endless loop of torture, doomed to finish generators and escape, or die thousands of times over? That every individual game of Dead by Daylight is a canon happening, that our precious Dwight Fairfield has spent hundreds of thousands of hours fighting for moments of peace by the campfire? Probably very few, because most of that information is tucked away in character descriptions and tomes. The tomes of Dead by Daylight were originally their version of the Battle Pass, which had free and premium tiers, so you weren't paying for the lore at least, although that's now shifted to Rift passes. The tomes still exist, they're very easy to miss since they're relegated to an unusual icon that sits patiently next to the options button on the bottom left of your screen. They are, and always have been, a very shallow web of killer and survivor challenges, ranging from things like hook 10 survivors, to work on a generator for 30 seconds, to drop 5 pallets. Just things you would do as you play, regardless, rendering it an unusual choice to call them challenges at all. You can have one active at once, and completing it will reward you with some in-game currency you can use to level your character up. Each tome is dedicated to different killers and survivors. Tome 16, for example, unlocks more information about the Singularity Killer and the same DLC's survivor, Gabriel Soma. This information comes in the form of memory fragments, which tell a story of a particular moment as a story, not as a sterile biography-style description. Although you'll occasionally find some cool hidden gems tucked away in the tomes, I personally have never found them interesting. I don't feel satisfied by my repetitive uphill grind of complete 3 trials as killer or survivor to feel like they instill any kind of reward. You can select any tome you want to work on from the archives, so none of them are missable, but at this point in the game's life cycle, they are quite a lot to work through. I often pick a challenge and then forget about it for days, since they don't complete automatically. You'll have to return to the archives to cash it in. It makes me feel less motivated to keep working through the tome when I realise I've wasted several days. I used to read the information you'd unlock, but I don't bother now. The Dead by Daylight UI accommodates console players, but it's got a cursor and is obviously intended to be a PC UI, so I often find it easier to just look the associated tomes up online and read them there. I can't be bothered to negotiate with PC UI. Due to the nature of live service games demanding that each match begin on a blank slate with no overall progression beyond basic character leveling, the story cannot be delivered in any way that has consequences. The story cannot be embedded into your gameplay because that would be impossible to track, especially when playing in a group of people. To account for this, live service games completely squander narrative potential by relegating even the juiciest snippets of story to text collectibles. Most of your player base don't even know what they're missing. Like, apparently they're making a Phasmophobia movie? I hope they come up with some good ideas for that, because they have absolutely nothing to work with. But what does this have to do with horror? Horror is a genre reliant on storytelling. Horror is a genre with usually the shallowest mechanics. An action game might have combat mechanics, guns, skill trees, upgrades, movement abilities, tech to learn, speedrun potential stuff, map traversal, different enemies to kill in different ways, different kinds of ways to earn gaming satisfaction. If the story's a bit wank, it doesn't matter. Other things fill the gaps. In horror, it's not uncommon to have a player character who may as well not have hands. Games like Amnesia, Outlast PT, and Visage all feature characters with nominal use of their extremities, only remembering their fingers exist when it's time to perform some obscure puzzle, and only puzzles, since our main characters are utterly incapable of self-defense outside of cutscenes. The more combat you have, the more you veer in the direction of action horror, like Resident Evil, which are super fun games with fantastic visuals, but are seldom ever scary. They're campy. But a lot of survival horror games revolve around crawling on your belly through dark, claustrophobic environments, getting your pants shit straight off like a denim degloving, occasionally turning a valve or pulling a switch to open up the next section of the claustrophobic crawl. Without the ability to craft a story, or with any story relegated to files or tomes or whatever you want to call them, the narrative is lost. None of the games we will discuss today are scary, and this is a massive reason why. Because narrative is sacrificed for repetitive shallow gameplay, and repetitive shallow gameplay cannot be scary. If it makes up for it at all, it makes up for it with action. For most of these games, that's give and take. For Outlast Trials, that's a real loss. Increasing complexity doesn't always increase depth. Developers who try to combat this lack of depth often run into this issue. Although every game today has variations on stretch a shallow mechanic out for the sake of forcing more engagement, Phasmophobia is especially guilty of this. Recent developments have focused more on what feels like quick wins for gameplay complexity, artificially inflating depth by taking simple, accessible, and easy systems and adding arbitrary hurdles to jump. When fans of Phasmophobia asked for an improved shop interface and some more in-game mechanics, the developers of Phasmophobia responded by making those interfaces worse in a totally different way, and then giving every item in the game tiers. Every item was given a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, all of which needed to be grinded for. The tier 3 crucifix only obtainable for level 90s, and no, when you prestige at level 100, you obviously don't carry any of them over. In some cases, this was quite an interesting addition to the game. The dots equipment, used for obtaining a unique piece of evidence for some ghosts, adjusted well to this tiering system. Tier 1 dots is like a flashlight. Dots point in one direction, it can only be placed on a flat surface like a table or floor, it's super fiddly and narrow, and can be easily eclipsed by other objects. Tier 2 dots is a pod that can be placed on any surface, including ceilings, and throws out a sphere of dots to catch the ghosts. Tier 3 feels like you're inside a printer, a huge, roving wave of dots, a blinding tsunami of dots, a rapture of dots. No ghost can hide from these. every upgrade to this feels like a satisfying improvement of the equipment. I think that's fine. The issue is the assumption that that same complexity then needed to be added across the board for every single type of equipment. To name a few examples, firstly we have the matches. These go from a limited amount of matches in a matchbook, to a corner shop lighter, to a big cool cowboy lighter, or the notebook, which goes from a cheap notebook to a nice notebook to the grimoire, or the microphone, which just becomes a bigger microphone twice, or the candle, which becomes a bigger candle and then a gas lantern, or the smudge stick, which goes from smudge stick to slightly bigger smudge stick to ancient Mesopotamian incense holder. Granted, some of these tiers aren't merely aesthetic. There's a huge difference between how each tier of smudge stick affects the ghost, for instance, but by and large any difference is pretty nominal. Oh, each microphone tier or notebook tier affects a slightly bigger area, except most rooms in the game don't exceed those sizes, and you won't notice any difference since all ghosts will eventually use the items, and by the time you've grinded to the required level to unlock later tiers of this equipment, you'll probably be familiar with some of their specific ghost behaviour enough to narrow it down anyway. Fantastic. I think most of the items only needed 2 tiers, limited matches to unlimited lighter, normal notebook to grimoire. Phasmophobia decided everything has to have 3 tiers and then stuck to that without nuance or compromise. 3 tiers regardless of how much useless bloat it added to the menu system that has still not been meaningfully improved. The shop, loadout and item menus are all still bloated beyond belief and extremely irritating to try to quickly navigate, especially on console when your cursor moves like a dog straining at a leash. Differences are nominal and the grind is functionally dissatisfying. They recently introduced a new update that added further complexity to collecting ghost evidence. You can take photos of more types of evidence, you can record more evidence types on your video camera, and you can use the sound recorder, a new item to record audio. And while I love the concept, once again we are just piling on layers and layers of arbitrary bullshit to a game that didn't need it. More items for a solo player to haul in and out of the map. If it makes the games harder, then awesome, but the games aren't harder, they just take 3 times as long for the same rewards as before, and most of that time is spent standing in the corner of the ghost room just waiting for things to happen. At first, we rejoiced. There was more stuff for the van princess to do, more reason to leave a person in the van to watch the cameras and monitor sanity and ghost activity. We assumed they could record video activity from the monitor whilst doing other things, offering some easy recordings for the journal at the cost of having one teammate out of play. Only no, that would be too easy. To counteract this excellent repurposing of the van role into something a little more useful, especially on higher difficulties, the video camera will stop recording if you take 2 steps away from the monitor. If you want the video to record, you have to be standing in front of the monitor, permanently installed like a desk fan. You can't step away to check team lives, sanity, and ghost activity. The worst part, the sound recorder doesn't record by default. Do you click a button to begin recording? No, record isn't a toggle option. You have to click and hold to constantly record for evidence that may occur at any time. I played this update for a few hours and I got a weird twitch in my thumb because I was just standing around trying to record sounds for the optional objectives. I tried to click it only when I heard something, but sounds can be as short as a second and sometimes they're not audible to the player. They're just picked up by the sound recorder, so you end up having to hold the record button all the time in case something happens. It is absolutely asinine that you can't click record and then just drop it to the ground. You can argue it makes it too easy to collect evidence, and maybe it does, but A, you barely get rewarded for media collection anyway, B, it shouldn't be this hard to record evidence, and C, maybe they should have made a less binary mechanic to artificially inflate media collection without adding any actual depth to gameplay. Standing in the corner with your thumb on the X button in case a ghost makes a noise is unfortunately not a very clever, engaging, or rewarding mechanic. If the only way a mechanic in your game can work is by implementing it in a way that is annoying to interface with and offers 0 depth in exchange for inconvenience, then it's not really a good mechanic. Just because you had an idea doesn't mean it needs to exist. And I saw people praising this game because they were like, oh my god, it's so much harder now, so much more challenge. Like, sorry, were you just standing in the corner with your thumb up your ass before? Why are you meaningfully challenged by holding X while your friends do all of the work? Unless by harder you mean adding extra steps to things that offer nothing meaningful, in which case I agree, but I don't know why that's a positive trait. Other people were complaining that it made the games trickier, and it does, but my issue is more just with the insanely annoying expectation that I stand around like an idiot with my thumb on the button. This update didn't fix previous bugs and gripes with the existing media system. Only 3 pieces of evidence can be deleted still, and with how buggy the media system is, that's pure negligence at this point. Why is there a cap on the media that can be deleted? If I take a ghost photo, but for some ridiculous reason, it counts as a 1-star photo of salt because there's some old salt in the back of the frame and not the 6-foot wraith flying at me like an 18-wheeler truck, that's a photo deletion wasted, if I even have any left. People have been begging for one thing: either allow unlimited deletions or fix photos so that the highest value item in the photo is the one that takes precedence when naming and grading a photo. Neither have happened. Instead, we have increased the amount of evidence you can collect several-fold, which has only exacerbated the problem, since recorded evidence is registered automatically, so you can register a ton of things in one go and not be able to delete all of them when they turn out to be duplicates or lower star. Every time I think about the needless complexity of live service garbage, I end up thinking about Phasmophobia's Gold Apocalypse Sunny Meadows challenge. This challenge has existed a long time, since the game was much simpler, and it shows since it is now a feat entirely of RNG, requiring very little skill but ultimate patience. To attempt this challenge, you must head into the largest, oldest, and scariest map of the game, Sunny Meadows. You walk at less than half speed, the ghost hunts immediately on a 15 times difficulty modifier, and you need to escape alive after correctly guessing the ghost, getting a photograph of the ghost, and completing all the optional objectives. I think once upon a time this was probably a great idea. A nice trophy in your cabinet in return for using all of your ghost hunting knowledge, all your lessons learned, all your expertise culminating in one final ultimate challenge: thematic and mechanical catharsis. In practice, every person I personally know who's done this spent hours trying and trying and trying to finish this challenge until they either got lucky or they got super lucky and got a ghost called a Diogen, a special and unmistakable ghost type who always knows where you are but will always be slower than you. They'll follow you for the whole hunt, and as long as you're careful about not giving it an angle, you should be fine. You can take photos of Diogens without risking your life, they're easier. And when I say hours resetting until you get lucky, Dio or not, I don't mean like 2 hours, I mean like 12 hours, 20 hours, days. A few people took weeks. Obviously, if you're God's jammiest soldier, you'll get it on your second try, but you're among the chosen, and this isn't about the chosen. Obviously, you don't need a Diogen, as many other ghosts have unique evidence, but there's still the sigh of relief ghosts. I sometimes see people bragging that they did this challenge legit no cheese, and honestly, I don't think that's a thing. At the end of the day, you're attempting a challenge over and over again until you can do it. Is cheese determined by purity of heart? Nobility of intent? Spending 3 days trying and trying again for a shot at rolling the best odds and the best luck isn't unusual. There are 26 ghost types and you'll get 50 Diogens in a row in normal gameplay, but the second you're hoping for one, they'll be the rarest ghost type in the game, and you're loading into the biggest map in the game, walking at half speed, able to hold 3 things maximum. It's going to take several minutes to traverse this map, and if the ghost isn't making its ghost room obvious, you'll stumble around in the dark until you get dropped on and killed out of nowhere. Some guides suggest soft resetting until you get a Diogen in one of the first rooms, which is outrageous. I can't imagine how lucky you'd need to be for a 1 in 26 ghost to spawn in one of the roughly 50 rooms on one of the biggest maps in the game and not get the drop on you. It's more worthwhile to just play and hope you get lucky on any ghost than to reset for a Diogen, but hey, do what works for you. You'll likely need to assign 1 slot for a smudge stick, an item that at tier 3 freezes the ghost in place so you can grab a quick snap and then run away and hide before it finds its ghostly feet again. You'll therefore need a camera in the 2nd slot, and if you don't want to be lost in here, you'll need a torch. That's 3 slots, okay, but this challenge also asks that you complete objectives. With the ghost hunting for 1 minute every 20 to 30 seconds, you'll need to slow walk in, get a photo of it and survive, slow walk out, grab whichever candles, incense and sound recorders and crucifixes you need to complete the 3 optional objectives, and slow walk back in. All objectives need to be completed without dying, at which point you must leave, with the ghost again hunting every half minute, get back to the van, circle the correct ghost, and flee the scene. I've asked a lot of people about this challenge because I've been really interested in trying it myself, and no one, not one single person, had anything good to say about it. The Gold Challenge mode in Sunny Meadows exposes most of the problems with Phasmophobia's gameplay loop because it demands precision and immaculate polish in a game that is, by all rights, incredibly imprecise and unpolished. The walking speed is frustrating, only being able to carry 3 items is frustrating, being able to run from a deadly malicious ghost is frustrating, being hunted every 20 seconds is frustrating, finding the ghost's room on the biggest map in the game is frustrating, especially when the ghost can change to a new favourite room on a whim. Waiting for RNG evidence to manifest is frustrating. I could go on. The Gold Apocalypse Challenge is a fantastic idea in theory, hardest difficulty, solo venture, the culmination of everything you've learned at the peak of a massive journey, but in practice it's a dreadful slog that forces you to play along with rules that feel like a challenge in the same way it might feel like a challenge to push your neighbour's car up the hill and he's still sitting in it, watching instead of helping, and you're both aware that he's left the brakes on, but he's insisting that, well, that's the point that I left the brakes on. This is supposed to be a challenge? And this leads me to my next reason, which is no live service horror game is actually scary. I think there's a pyramid when it comes to horror games, where each point on the pyramid equates to scary, long-term, and fun. And you can't have all three. A fun and long-term game can't be scary because familiarity is comfort and you'll quickly grow accustomed to its tricks. A scary and long-term game can't be fun because to protract out feelings of discomfort and tension to lengths of tens or hundreds of hours would be like the Abu Ghraib of fatigue. And finally, a scary and fun game cannot be long term. Horror is best in short bursts. PT is less than an hour long, and that game went down in history as one of the most terrifying gaming experiences possible. Would it have been scary as the full-length game everyone mourned when it was cancelled? I doubt it. The longer you make your horror game, the less scary it is. The longer it goes on, the more decisions you need to make, and the more decisions you need to make, the more of a specialised experience your final product becomes. Will you turn it into a tense jumpscare bonanza like Layers of Fear or The Mortuary Assistant? A lot of people, me included, fall to pieces in moments of tension, the threat of a jumpscare lingering on the peripheral. Jumpscare games feel a lot like being left in a room with a huge balloon. You're told that the balloon is going to pop, and when it does, it's going to make a very loud and very upsetting noise. This is enough to destroy me, honestly. Maybe the balloon never even pops. Maybe it pops once per minute. If your audience is receptive to that, congratulations. If you're like my brother, one of those weirdos who is somehow totally immune to jump scares and creepy faces, you'll find the experience boring at best. He hated The Mortuary Assistant. He was bored out of his mind. You can instead try to play with genre, like in the Resident Evil games. Resident Evil 7, I'd say, is our best example. It takes a crawl on your belly silent enemy horror tension bonanza that scares the shit out of me, but about halfway through the game becomes your more standard action horror again. The Dead Space series, Fear, and even later sections of the Silent Hill games basically give you a minimum of 3 guns and let you loose in areas full of enemies. Tension is lost, but it might have been lost anyway, so better to replace it with a bit of fun. Where suspense is lost, these games tend to substitute in things like body horror or intense chases, or other sources of stress that aren't necessarily horror, but work well when horror themed. The original Outlast games played with genre, marrying moments of tense stealth with heart-palpitating moments of chases that left my hands drenched in sweat. Outlast never let up, and it never gave you time to adjust. Moments of watching cutscenes or standing in thinly disguised loading screens, like those decontamination chambers between areas, became a breath of fresh air I can't begin to describe to you. Moments of honest relief that you wish you could stay in forever, but knowing that you need to move forward if you want to enjoy the experience you paid for, to unwrap this intriguing narrative experience, to chase the thrills of this intense horror game. Especially on Nightmare and Insanity mode, Outlast mastered this overwhelming feeling of never being safe. It's hostile design incarnate, the gaming equivalent of lying on an anti-homeless bench. Although some people will insist that playing Survivor in Dead by Daylight is scary, I don't personally agree. It can be thrilling, yes, but scary? Tense? No, I wouldn't say so, especially in groups when your friends are doing Wesker impressions.
Poor performance indeed.
Phasmophobia can have scary moments. The Sunny Meadows map still genuinely frightens me, especially the morgue, which remains stacked full of still bodies, buzzing flies puncturing the sickening silence. Occasionally a ghost will materialise in your face and scare your pants brown. I found these moments rare though, maybe 1 in 20 games or 1 in 10. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed isn't fun or scary, just long. Outlast Trials is long, and depending on how fulfilled you are by repetitive tasks, may be fun, but it's absolutely not scary. Complexity isn't depth. Even with skill trees, live service games are often super shallow. It took me a while to even be able to put my finger on why I found Outlast Trials so boring. I'd meet up with my 4-man in the lobby, pick a trial and a difficulty, carefully curate our individual builds, and rush into the trial. I would be bored within minutes. I'd shuffle around half-heartedly looking for objectives and sometimes just sitting in hiding places so I could scroll on my phone. I've never in my life had a game that failed to engage me so hard that I'd post up and mute my mic just so I could see what's going on with Twitter. It was unprecedented. I almost felt guilty, and then I realised why I was so bored. Outlast Trials is built with solo players, duos, trios, teams of friends, and teams of strangers in mind. There is no variation in your objectives depending on those factors. This means that a 1-man team and a 4-man team will have exactly the same things to do under exactly the same circumstances. Let's take the Kill the Snitch trial as our example. You begin the trial outside a police station. You enter the police station and activate the trial by standing in the security room. You go down into the basement and fill generators with fuel while avoiding patrolling enemies. You find the snitch and push him towards a door, which is locked. You are told to find a key. Nearby is a decapitated body. You put your hand into the body and pull out a key. This was your tutorial. Using the key to open the door, you open up the map to find 3 doors locked by 3 keys. These keys are no longer nearby either. They're dotted around in random bodies hidden in random places. The bodies are marked by symbols. You're shown the symbols you need to find, and you are then let loose to find the bodies with the symbols on, grab the keys, and open the doors. When you finally push the snitch to the finish line, you electrocute him by holding a switch. When he dies, you run out of the trial. Firstly, this is Kill the Snitch. This is all it will ever be. The map is always exactly the same, although different doors will lock and traps will be in different places. So once you know the layout, you can sprint the length of it with your eyes closed. The objectives are always exactly the same, always filling generators with fuel, turning those generators on, then doing the keys back upstairs with the snitch. It's when I was turning these objectives over in my mind that I began to realise what the problem was. Since they have to accommodate every possible team size and level of communication, they need to be 1, extremely easy, and 2, possible to do solo without any friction whatsoever. Firstly, this renders them entirely unstimulating. You find the symbol on the body, you get the key, it's a square peg in a square hole, the kind of stuff they taught you when you were still in nappies. This isn't too bad on its own, this is an accessible way to add artificial depth to a gameplay loop, and depending on your difficulty level, you can still encounter serious challenges when engaging with these puzzles. Secondly, however, they have been made to accommodate solo players and full teams that cannot communicate with one another. This means that every single action can be done very easily solo, which means that one person can do the entire thing without issue. If there's 2 generators, 2 people have a task. If there's 3 keys, 3 people have a task at the most. Heck, maybe only 1 person has a task if you so prefer. If you tell people what you're doing, like I'll go and get the star key, for example, you're still not necessarily giving them anything they can work with. If someone gets the star key before you get there, that's fine too. Nothing is gained or lost. In Dead by Daylight, all tasks can be performed by 1 person. It only takes 1 person to fix a generator or open an exit gate, but you cannot finish a match without the engagement of a full team. If 1 person's AFK at the start of the match, you've basically already lost. In Phasmophobia, it only takes 1 person to collect evidence, but 1 person can only hold 3 things and use one of them at once, so it makes sense to share the load. 4 people will have an investigation done significantly faster. In Outlast Trials, your teammates just have to be present for major checkpoints. If communication was impossible, I'd be more understanding of these choices. However, Outlast Trials has global team chat. Not proximity chat like Phasmophobia, where you can only be heard in the same room and muffled adjacent rooms, unless you use the walkie-talkie. Not no chat like Dead by Daylight, which I'll whinge about later, forcing you to rely on your teammates not to totally sabotage your game, but team chat. You can hear each other speak across the whole map. It's also the only game in this roster that accompanies a ping system so you can point things out, and the ping will specify whether it's a hiding spot, enemy, key, etc. And the only game in the roster with a comms wheel, so you can select from a few predefined phrases if you don't want to talk in team chat. I totally understand concern about abuse or griefing, but lobbies can be left, people can be blocked or avoided and reported, and everyone I've encountered on this game and within this community is quite chill, so it's not hard to find a team to join, and it's a shame to have to play such a watered down game as a team of 4 involved communicating people who want a challenge just to accommodate the worst case scenario with no ability to toggle a setting for more involved puzzles, or just have some trials have way more involved puzzles, and some of them have more simple ones. It renders the gameplay very flat. Someone is always left out because there's simply not enough for the whole team to do. There are not enough roles for a 4-man queue to fill. You can't even meaningfully distract enemies so your teammates can do objectives. Enemies like Sergeant Leyland Coyle have specific behaviour. You cannot loop him while your teammates are electrocuting the snitch because he will always aggro on the person who is using the lever. His AI cannot be distracted. Keeping the enemies of Outlast Trials busy so that your friends can do their objectives is almost redundant. If they're sneaking properly, you don't need to get involved. If you're getting chased by an enemy, hiding in a hiding spot will lose the chase and they'll just wander back to where they were. Maybe you can keep baiting them for chases, but the chases are boring A to B events, even on higher difficulties, where they just take a bit more time. The intelligence in artificial intelligence is always a bit of a bold claim. Enemies are either deaf, blind, and lazy on lower difficulties, or they're either superhuman surgeons of pursuit who can hear your heart beating from inside a barrel 20 minutes away on higher difficulties. There's no humanity in these AI enemies. They're predictable, boring, and fundamentally unscary. I began to realise that the reason I was going in with high spirits and good intentions and then sitting on my phone was because the tasks of Outlast Trials are so mundane and simple that there's functionally zero need to communicate with your team, either through callouts or to help them with puzzles, because the trials are made with solo players in mind. Even if you're all switched on, there are not physically enough tasks on some of the maps for everyone to do. The maps are too large to follow any kind of structured strategy, so it tends to be a scene of chaos with player and enemy AI running amok amongst one another, and teamwork is almost useless unless it comes to clutch revives. This makes for boring gameplay if members of your team literally have nothing to do. I appreciate making the game playable for solo or for a person who's wound up with randoms who won't help them with tasks that might have required multiple people, but in streamlining this process to a few 2-step tasks that can be performed by a single person with zero issues, while everybody else sits around in barrels and waits, I feel like we lost a lot of rewarding challenge and a lot of incentive to get involved and function as part of a team. Live service templates involving AI enemies on the same few maps with simple objectives is arguably a major kicker to the expected lifespan of live service horror. We'll talk a bit about having an end-of-life plan for if servers ever go down, and having AI enemies is a fantastic way to circumvent needing to kill a game in its entirety, especially live service games, which often sustain themselves on skins and other rolling transactions that will be totally lost in the event that servers drop. The problem I find with AI is that it's a hollow thing to build an infinite gameplay loop around, especially in big open maps. The AI of Outlast 1 and 2 were fine because it was a tight, carefully crafted map with very limited routes to run down and very few places to hide. It was about getting to the next checkpoint without getting your lungs ripped out. It felt like running from a tsunami. The direction didn't matter, just so long as you run with everything you have. The AI in Outlast 1 and 2 was just a win-lose condition. It merely needed to manage the task of running in a straight line after you. In open maps, this all falls apart. AI will be dumb as bricks on lower difficulties, and Dr. Manhattan on higher difficulties. On lower difficulties, you can be sat right under Leland Coyle's girdle, and he won't twig you. On higher difficulties, he will grab you by the hair like a mandrake and yank you wholesale from a barrel because he can smell your pad even in the pitch black darkness. Playing against AI is always a steamroll. The difficulty just determines which direction that steamroll moves in. It's also very dull. AI can be clever, yeah, but can it be cheeky, strategic, toxic? Can you teabag at it until it gets angry enough to make mistakes? Can it take pity on you? Can you outwit it beyond just confusing its pathing? Can it counter your perks? Can it predict your behaviour? Can it be a player who's played this trial so many times that it knows where you'll go? Can it notice you're a new player and go for someone else instead? Can it pause a chase to be silly, then keep going? Can you lead it to a griefing player, point out where they're hiding, and then teabag at them while they're being murdered for their hubris? Maybe some of those things. Maybe some of those things some of the time in certain circumstances. Maybe some of those things can be hard-coded in to occur at particular triggers or entirely at random, but never organically. You'll never face the bitter irritation of dealing with some toxic shitbag who plays an overpowered character and then acts like they did something when they wreck a team of 4 newcomers, but you'll never enjoy the communal bliss of bitching about the experience either. Reddit hates Dead by Daylight's ghoul, and for great reason. There are few other characters in the game's life cycle who are so easy to play and yet so fundamentally broken, especially against inexperienced players. Oh, but the counterplay is being a good looper. I'm sure it is, but my mate has 10 hours in this game and you have 3,000, and a character so strong that many players swear he's bugged. Go away and play several more weeks of this until you're a looper on par with a 1% player isn't good advice, I'm sorry. Even so, there's little more refreshing in this world than hopping into the Dead by Daylight Rage subreddit to look at the hundreds of other cope and seethe posts after getting tunneled out of the game by a character who can cross-map in 2 seconds and ignore pallets, bought an Ebony Mori, and shakes his head down at you before claiming a cheap no-ed kill. Wow, if you don't play Dead by Daylight, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about, but I promise it's eye-rolling to get bad-mannered on by a broken killer. Take your win with grace, Pumpkinhead Nursemain, and then balance your karma by fostering animals in need of a good home. You'll never be able to woo an AI by doing a little dance for it, by running up to the bar in Dead Dog's saloon and pretending to serve Nemesis a pint, by playing the lute for a nodding Sadako who decides to turn friendly after tunneling out your irate brother from the game. You'll never earn its sympathy by being the most pathetic player on the team and being allowed to leave by virtue of being shit at the game. It's the one thing Ghostbusters nailed, this cheeky back and forth with other players. It's not always the rule, considering human-controlled ghosts in Phasmophobia would be awful in its current state, but could potentially be a great incentive for a future game mode. But generally speaking, AI might future-proof your game, but human players actually make it fun, give it heart, make it memorable. That's the choice we make. It's the one good part of Ghostbusters. All I can say is, I remember lots of funny times with friendly or even fake-friendly endgame build killers on Dead by Daylight, but there's not a single thing an Outlast Trials character has done that's memorable. Now, Outlast is, I don't know, maybe between 3 and 6 hours long, depending on whatever factors, and that's a pretty perfect length for this kind of constant horror. How do I know that? Because I spent 45 hours in the Outlast Trials, and it sucked. Now, picking up this game, I thought it was going to be something like 10 trials to be played in order, in co-op, with a story accompanying them and some cool endings. Maybe chapter select at the end. Maybe a cool reveal. I like when games make effective use of co-op mechanics too, so I was hoping for a bit of that. Maybe we all see or hear different things. Maybe we have to sacrifice each other or steal perks to make ourselves stronger. I was excited for a tightly crafted Outlast-style House of Horrors. It genuinely did not compute to me that this would be some daily, weekly task live service slop, because I could not comprehend how the tense horror of Outlast could be sustained indefinitely. And that's because it can't. When the folks over at Barrel Boy Entertainment were brainstorming how they'd make their perfect forever game Outlast Trials, intended to be enjoyed for weeks, months, and even years, they seem to have narrowed down a few must-haves. 1. Outlast series chasers. 2. Lots and lots of gore and extremity. And 3. A heavy backdrop of dehumanizing governmental overreach. And they do manage that, but to nowhere near the impact of the first games in the series. Outlast was short, fine-tuned, and thoroughly scripted. In Outlast, a chase sequence would happen at a very specific part of the game, usually in a moment where you feel closest to escape, or most safe, or most relieved. Chris Walker would strut around the corner and gouge your eyes out of your head. The final sequence of the game is a nail-biting sprint to the finish line pursued by the Wall Rider, a ghost intent on climbing inside your body and staring it like a puppet as it rots, the flesh dripping from your bones. These moments are tense. In Outlast Trials, chase sequences are so frequent that they irritate. Gory visuals are so prevalent that you don't even notice them anymore. Seen one nun mannequin with a pair of rotting human chebs stapled to her plastic chest, seen them all. The first time you enter one of the trials, you might inch through it carefully. Enemies wander the place like lost souls, screaming cryptic screams. Some enemies jump out from cupboards and inside barrels. The Skinner Man waits on the precipice of your sanity, lurching at you the moment your defenses weaken. You crawl past decapitated, burned mannequins, sometimes decorated with real butchered human body parts. You see glistening corpses wet with blood, hours old, wedged into impossible positions under desks. The air is thick with tension that is immediately broken during whatever cursory cutscene is about to introduce whichever prime asset you'll be dealing with. Sergeant Leyland Coyle slams a victim against the metal grates that separate you from him and the prison, electrocuting them viciously. Mother Gooseberry dances eerily with some naked corpse atop her Futterland theme park entrance. Franco Barbie probably makes some weird comment about his mum, I don't remember. Either way you see them, you might get a grace period and then they're roaming. They roam a lot, especially on higher difficulties, and will be accompanied by generic enemies that trample around covered in chains. Every time you're seen, you'll hear the same noise spike and then the chase music begins. You hear a lot of the chase music. None of the chases are scripted, unlike the main game, which means they can happen at any time, usually with plenty of warning, by a roaming AI that staggers around awkwardly like a cyborg, saying their looping voice lines over and over again. Sometimes, especially on higher difficulties, you end up relentlessly chased by a roaming enemy you can't quite shake. This does not elicit the claustrophobic panic of previous Outlast games. It's annoying. Hearing that familiar sting again is eye-rolling. It's just another yank away from completing your objectives. It's like getting a knock on the door every time you sit down to eat your dinner. Without the thrilling shock of a chase you didn't know was about to happen, and without the "I just need to get to that door" decisive thinking of a linear game where you know the chase will end and the enemy will despawn and you will get to continue with the story just so long as you reach that windowsill or that lift or that exit hatch, the chases of Outlast Trials become a huge pain in the arse. Enormous. This might be scary until you die for the first time, at which point the tension shatters and it is no longer scary. Most likely you'll have died for the first time 25 in-game hours ago. This will be your 10th time going through this trial in particular. You'll know exactly what to do and you've just got one more daily task to finish, to complete 3 trials on any difficulty in exchange for 100 trial bucks, or whatever they're called. One single profile picture costs 50, and you're just trying to get these keys and Leland Coyle is just on you. He won't roam anywhere else, you can't distract him very long, your other teammates are off doing their own thing or AFK in a hiding spot, and every time you try to scrub through his corpse for a key you're getting walloped by Mr. Sundown Town, cue a chase, cue you quickly losing him, cue you returning to the area, rinse and repeat. In some instances, such as the Kill the Snitch part of the Kill the Snitch trial, where you have to electrocute a man to death by interacting with one of 4 monitors around the snitch, Leland will attack whoever is at the monitor. You can try to bait him away, but his AI is configured to specifically pursue anyone at a monitor. You'd think, oh, just play hot potato with him, take it in turns, but everyone hopping on and off the monitor for 5% progress each takes fucking years, and you end up just tanking damage from him to get 20% off at a time instead. I appreciate that chases are intended to be disruptive, they're intended to prevent you from easily completing your objectives, but I very much doubt the designers of this game wrote nuisance on the board when they were brainstorming ideas for this mechanic. I don't imagine they stood around debating on how to make chases more annoying. You're just getting into a trial, given the same task to do every time, annoyed to death by whichever prime asset they pull out of cryo sleep this time, and do it whilst being pestered relentlessly by an AI that more resembles a very needy toddler. Horror evaporates. Trials aren't procedurally generated, so surprises wane. Every trial looks exactly the same, besides having dead bodies in different hiding places. You learn the map like the back of your hand. Leyland becomes the neighbour that happens to leave their house every single time you do, even when you're noticeably rushing to make it to work in time. You tell them you're busy today and he calls you a frigid bitch, but he's out there the next day too, like nothing happened. You get 100 XP for using bandages 10 times. It's the day's daily daily task. You use it to buy 2 t-shirts and 2 emblems you don't want, but you're not allowed to move up through the battle pass until you've bought everything on this page, and you want the doll outfit on page 8, so you just put your hours in like it's a 9 to 5. At this rate, it will take another 30 trials to reach that page if you're playing on a hard enough difficulty, so you pick the easiest ones to do over and over again until you grind out the XP. Believe it or not, but my source of inspiration for this video was Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. Marcus and I were sick to death of Outlast Trials and Phasmophobia, and he can't seem to get the hang of not dying in Dead by Daylight, although you could argue that's the title, and therefore an intended part of the experience, so we had a look for some other co-op games we could play. Minecraft Dungeons is kind of bland. We've done all the We Were Here's, highly recommend by the way. Overwatch and Marvel Rivals weren't hitting the same anymore. We finished every Overcooked, and oh hey, a Ghostbusters game in co-op? That sounds amazing. We paid good money for the experience and downloaded it in tandem, excited to start something new together. So you load in, play the tutorial solo, and oh no. Oh dear god, no. Anticipating some sweet 10-hour co-op story focused on tackling incrementally harder missions, incrementally fiddlier ghosts, teamwork and love and self-sacrifice, and the overarching themes of the power of an indomitable human will in the face of insurmountable eldritch impossibility, we were loaded into a lobby hub area and told to go to the computer to start a job. Amidst a wholesome selection of fully voiced characters, some weirdly ugly looking player characters, and a set of mechanics made with love, I found oh no, is that a soft battle pass? Leveling via XP earned by completing missions would get me slightly different t-shirts? No. Surely not. To be sure, I loaded up my first mission. We landed in a huge museum and were told to find the ghost. We found the ghost. Throwing our ghost catching beams around accidentally made a ton of mess, which made a bar go up. I don't know why. We caught the ghost. We were immediately jettisoned back to the lobby, given a small amount of XP, and told to go to the computer to select another mission. I've never played a game before that has forced me to grind randomly generated quick play matches to access more of a game's story, but I can tell you I was stunned at this game's entitlement. Our gameplay loop feels so simple that it plays like a side mechanic in a bigger game. Play several quick play matches using a mechanic that is fundamentally boring to earn more of the story, said Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. Right. Okay. An on-screen notification informed me that I could access the next story event at level 13. I was level 3. To reach level 13, I had to grind out contracts, which were basically quick play games. I would load a level, tether a ghost within 3 minutes, leave, and soak up the dregs of XP I was afforded. Maybe I'd get an extra boost of XP for doing my daily tasks, picking up fungus, which appears to be some XP boost collectible thing, or tethering a certain amount of minor ghosts, but by and large it was 1 match per level. We uninstalled that game almost immediately. What sucked for me about this game was the sheer passion on display by a group of very talented developers and designers who had clearly been shunted into making one of the dullest live service games available. Unlike Phasmophobia, which leans heavy on Unity Store assets, or Outlast Trials, which already had a bank of assets to work with, Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed feels homemade. It feels scratch-cooked, built with love. Characters are independently modelled and voiced, which again sets it against much of the roster we're looking at today. I never encountered any bugs. Connectivity was seamless. Maps looked interesting despite there being zero incentive to explore them. It's just so fundamentally boring to play that I don't imagine it could keep anyone's attention for long. Next, we're moving on to reason 3, lazy development. This title might come off a bit harsh, but I sat here a while trying to think of an alternative and couldn't, so let's just go. Lazy development encompasses the many shortcuts developers can take when a game concept is live service, and how that feels against a backdrop of drip-fed content and constant monetization. The main thing that works about Dead by Daylight is that by now, after 9 years of content updates, patches and DLCs, it feels like a complete game. Although it began with a roster of 3 very basic killers and survivors whose perks served the absolute fundamentals of gameplay, Dead by Daylight, at 9 years old, has an enormous roster of characters to play as and against, maps to play on, and perks to play with on both sides. There's a lot to critique that game for, which we'll mainly get to when we reach the community section of this video, but I think that 9 years in, for better or worse, first, we can all appreciate that Dead by Daylight is a complete thriving game. Did it release that way? Extremely debatable, but it's a good sign at least that these games have the capacity to deliver on their promises as long as they have a good fundamental structure and gameplay loop, and a community that returns for consistently delivered and good quality additions. Sunken cost helps too, regardless of how hostile a game is to new players, as Dead by Daylight proves, since it is brutal to new players. I think one of the main problems with live service as a whole is that a content roadmap straddles that irritating gulf between delayed full game content or free DLC that you just have to wait for. Especially in the wake of early access being a thing, allowing independent developers to publish something simple early and gather support and funding to build on that for a final release. When we marry live service and this just because it hits the market doesn't mean it has to be a full game attitude, the consequences of this aren't just Overwatch 2. They're games like Phasmophobia, which continue to release content updates that are just parts of the game that don't exist yet. Phasmophobia especially seems to exist in this strange alpha, beta, full release, Schrodinger's cat situation. Alpha, beta, and full release just seem to be labels now that people apply to things when they want them to have more grace in their release cycle, and less expectations set on them despite the fact that they kind of promise them. It allows games and their defenders to justify a lack of content by insisting that it's coming in the roadmap, and simultaneously the game is also still only in beta, so you need to be patient, despite the game being a full existing released game out of beta, and that a live service roadmap isn't supposed to be entirely dedicated to finishing a game that many people paid for years after it's supposedly released in full. When it comes to DLC, the audience is more split, especially when free updates come with premium paid for tiers. Some people totally hate this format of monetization, but personally I don't mind it, especially when the original game is free. Overwatch and Marvel Rivals is free, and Dead by Daylight is free with PS Plus, so anything you buy after that is to me a bonus. I personally set myself budgets equating to time spent in-game, usually like 30 quid for the first few hundred hours, since 30 quid is what I would expect to pay for some games anyway. It's like a median average price I'm willing to pay. After that period, I tend to reassess the budget. I don't mind monetarily supporting games I enjoy, especially when I have hundreds or thousands of hours in them. I buy battle passes, I got a pack of skins on Outlast Trials. Live service games as a whole feel like they've taken the worst from both sides of the coin, as in alpha states and full releases, and often end up feeling unfinished. Their kind of Schrodinger's alpha nature negates critique about insubstantial gameplay because they're still releasing content, but their simultaneous false Schrodinger's full complete release negates the need to commit anything to said content. There's no incentive for a company to commit to any kind of time frame at the end of which a game will be finished, and ideally a game would be finished before it was released, but because of the existence of alpha games, there's a lot of leeway there, especially from very faithful fans as well, and especially for indie companies. In the end, it's just all too easy to string your players along, waiting for this final build that kind of is promised and kind of just never materializes. I sincerely do not mind in-game monetization when I'm tossing a tenner here and there and supporting a live service that I like, but I'm so bitter about this epidemic of Schrodinger's alpha. Mechanically, it plays the same as, and occasionally worse than, the PC beta version. The controller mapping is abysmal on console, the running feels dreadful on a controller, turning the journal pages is bound to the same buttons as the walkie-talkie, so you spam the walkie when you're flipping the pages, the cursor moves like a cow in molasses, I could go on. I hate the way this game feels to play on console. It was very clearly not tested properly with users, and it came with a whole host of new feature updates that, as we've discussed, are just the end product of generating artificial depth by injecting the game full of useless bloat. Oh, we added a new map, Point Hope. Point Hope is kinda shit. I used to select random when picking maps, but since Point Hope, I just have to pick a map I actually want to play. I can't use random because the people I play with hate Point Hope so much that they basically just get back in the van if we get it by accident. Phasmophobia is obviously unfinished. So are its copycats, Demonologist, Forsaken, Forewarned, Foreskin. The roadmap of content updates aren't extra DLC like in Dead by Daylight, new characters, new killers, new maps and mechanics. The Content updates are things like, we'll take one of our Unity asset flip maps at a time and spend 6 months overhauling it, then deliver it back to you like it's the second coming of Christ, and not the bare minimum expectation of a fully released game that you paid for years ago. These updates also come like, at the most, 2 or 3 times a year. It feels extremely rare to get a Phasmophobia update, and often they can be very disappointing in what they put out. Phasmophobia rarely, if ever, introduces anything new. All content updates are just dedicated to finishing basic aspects of the game. Don't get me started on Horror 2.0. Mainly because, we'll get there in a bit. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed feels the most bare bones of them all, probably because I played a few hours without ever getting to the point where I could unlock more story. As I mentioned back in the introduction of this video, people figured out you could make an easy buck by taking a simple tech demo, turning it into a match-based gameplay loop, and just have players do the thing over and over again for tens of hours to unlock t-shirts that they won't wear. Even despite Phasmophobia's snail-pace bare minimum roadmap, there's still fun to be had because it's built on the foundation of an entertaining gameplay loop. Phasmophobia, at least at first, can be really fun. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed is not built on an entertaining gameplay loop. You walk in, find the ghost, tether it, box it, and leave. You have a ghost tracker that works like the heartbeat sensors from the Alien franchise, but worse, but that's it. The problem is that when you take on contracts, it's basically yes or no whether you're able to lasso the ghost based on your gear level. Your gear is leveled so incrementally, like a dot on the progress bar per game, that it feels an arbitrary thing to have to level to. Different levels allow you to upgrade different components, and different components means it becomes a slightly improved doohickey. Improve enough components to increase gear level and catch harder ghosts. You end up in this situation where wrangling level 1 ghosts is so easy that it feels like a side mechanic in itself, but wrangling level 2 ghosts before you hit level 10 is so hard it's basically impossible without a fully involved team, so you're just stuck grinding level 1 contracts. I think 11-year-old me who 100%ed Spyro 1 over and over again because every other game in the world was outside of her comfort zone would have honestly loved a game like this, where you play something easy forever and watch meaningless bars fill up with this impression of constant growth, this facade of productivity. So I'm sure there's a very particular niche that this game fills, but my god, is it garbage. If you're going to stretch out a single gameplay loop into an infinite loop of incremental reward, a cynical trough of nutrition-devoid content for your little piggies to gorge themselves on, you have to make sure that fundamental gameplay loop is at least fun. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed feels like playing a demo of a scrapped mechanic from a much better game, and they want you to do it for many, many hours. One of the biggest problems with Outlast Trials is that it's basically marked an end to the Outlast series. I might end up eating my words, especially since the Red Barrel wiki page optimistically lists Outlast 3 as to be announced, which feels mental for an online encyclopedia that works hard to maintain accuracy, but hey, maybe I should start calling everything that doesn't exist and probably never will to be announced. It might change my outlook on a lot of things, like Dyson spheres. The squeaky wheel gets the grease and all. Video game budgets can be massive. They can also be very small. Outlast Trials was produced on an extremely small budget, and despite the mistake I made in my video on Trials where I incorrectly assumed that the catalogue battle passes were paid for with real cash, Trials only makes money from skins sold at the beginning of every major update, a few times a year. This trickle of cash flow reinvigorates the game for another update until presumably the well runs dry. The thing with live service is that without consistent monetization, you have a one-time influx of cash when the game releases, with a few crests in profit here and there as time goes on, alongside DLC releases and skin pack releases. Outlast Trials was made on a lower budget than Outlast 1 and sold 20 million copies, which is awesome. A lot of time and effort is spent putting money back into the game, but after a certain point, decisions will need to be made on whether to keep injecting cash into a game that likely will never grow, or whether to put it into a new project. These choices are always a risk, and Outlast Trials takes a lot of risk in how it delivers new updates because it gives as much as possible away for free, and we'll talk about the opposite end of that spectrum in just a moment. I have a lot of gripes with Outlast Trials, but I will always hand it to them that they are enthusiastic about delivering passionate work. Even if I find the gameplay loop very stale and I barely last a trial without getting bored, I will hand it to them that this is a game made with a satisfactory amount of love by a team of people who are very excited to hand it over. Like when your mate gets you a birthday present and then won't stop grinning while you're opening it, desperate to see your reaction. Red Barrels are generally always over the moon with excitement at what you'll think of their next update. That said, it is a shame that live service games basically paralyze a team in place unless they have the forethought and planning to invest in future projects or side projects. It's likely we won't see another Red Barrel title until Outlast Trials is beginning to die, on the basis that they've budgeted for that eventuality, and if not, then maybe we never will again. Unless a live service game is monetized up to the ears, like Dead by Daylight, it feels like they're more often than not running on incrementally decreasing budgets as hype dies down, players move on to other things, and less new people buy the game. It's a shame to see a company that used to put out some of the most condensed pure horror experiences in gaming is now like a slave to the live service model, but if that's what they want to do, then that's what they want to do. I can still grieve the Outlast series in the meantime, but I respect their decisions, because hey, at least they're putting stuff out. Our biggest waste of potential here is unfortunately Phasmophobia, which has hit an estimated $450 million gross profit on Steam since release, and a further 3 million sales on console. At $20 per sale, that's a general but easily debatable further 60 million gross. Of the 21-person team, it's estimated that about 3 people actually work on the game itself with that budget. I check their careers page every now and again to see if we'll ever see any more actual programmers helping out, but they're always just hiring more level designers. They have like 8 level designers, and yet nothing I would consider to be a level in the game. Is this money laundering? I keep seeing arguments that $450 million goes fast, because Steam and console platforms have to take their cut, and then you pay tax on top of that, and I guess I'm sure it does, but it's also nothing to sniff at. I think our brains struggle to comprehend the bigger numbers, and it seems to me like a lot of people look at 450 million, $500 million, and see like 450,000 instead, which makes them anxious. 450 million is bonkers. It's the entire budget for Call of Duty Black Ops 3. It's like 4 times the budget that Fortnite was developed on. Much more is done with much less. Even though their net profit is around $150 million, that is $150,000,000,000. People still call this company indie, and maybe so since they are independent, but that's a AAA budget. This is no mom's basement project anymore. In fact, various Steam revenue trackers and VG stats reports, while not always consistent with each other, will report that Dead by Daylight has only just hit that same total gross PC revenue after 9 years. And look at what they achieve. Their team is bigger, yes, and more established, but they're only a few years older than Phasmophobia. Dead by Daylight has spent the better part of the last decade creating a robust team and company, investing in itself, investing in the game, making future plans, projections, seeing what the community wants, feeding back, working on making something that people enjoy. Phasmophobia has not used its time to do the same. Phasmophobia has the biggest budget of all the games we're looking at today, more than all of them combined, actually, and it's also functionally incomplete, unpolished, hobbling along with Unity store assets and broken mechanics. They have to pay their staff. Even if all salaries combined were like $2 or $3 million per year, it would be hundreds of years before that budget depleted. And the thing is, I mean, the economy's fucked. If you wanted to be like, hey team, you know what, we've made our money, we've won game development, let's fuck off this whole Phasmophobia business. Everyone takes a cut that sets them up for life, the team disbands, go forth and be free. I don't think anyone would blame you. Go, run wild and free with your money, escape, leave, have a good time. If that was the plan, I wouldn't be complaining right now. Instead, they keep popping up on my Twitter feed to excitedly tell me how the 4-year delayed update to the evidence collecting mechanics that will make each match more slow and convoluted has been delayed by a year. But stay excited, folks, because we're partnering with Makeship to sell you some plushies. They seem to want to be a live service game and to keep dropping updates, but I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to. Dead by Daylight's budget was $2 million. Outlast Trials' budget isn't publicly available, but Red Barrel did confirm that it was lower than the budget for Outlast 1, which was $1.4 million. We need to stop allowing bootlickers to be like, oh, but this sweet baby developer can't just spend that money on hiring new people. They can't afford it. Think of the risk. I suppose you're one of those people that thinks it takes 1 woman to make a baby in 9 months, so if we just get 9 women, a baby will come out in 1 month. I suppose you're just one of those people. People genuinely insist that the broken UI is supposed to look bad because it's diegetic, like an in-universe ordering system UI. People argue that we need to be grateful for drip-fed updates and broken or severely delayed promises because they're a small indie team. I saw someone get told to go back to Call of Duty if you want good UI. UI, like that's the only other option. Currently we have a small team of people who are basically just remaking all the maps, and a lot of people don't want some of the more fonder, familiar, older maps to be remade at all, so I don't know where this is coming from. With no future games in the pipeline, Phasmophobia is still being babied in an apparent alpha state, despite their claims that it's a full release, and with no credible attempts to make any updates that aren't just adding arbitrary grind-based tier systems to a set of items that don't need to have unlockable tiers, Phasmophobia is spending like a tiny bit of money year on year to do nothing, and in some cases to make things worse. With $150 million net, you could take 100 risks and come away with tens of millions of dollars. 100 more developers would be a waste, yes, too many cooks, but can we just get like 2 more? Phasmophobia fans had a legit defense 3 years ago when the game was still on a reasonable timeline, but it's 5 years since it first released and 1 year since the full release, and we've not even swapped out the Unity asset character model pack that's also used in House Flipper. The tier system, prestige system, and later Chronicle update was very disappointing, and you had me waiting on the edge of my seat for that for almost a year. Why would I stick around for a player character overhaul that's also likely to offer very little to my experience? You can't keep drip feeding all this nothing to your open-mouthed player base with zero plans for how this $500 million is going to be invested in the future. Maybe DLCs, future games, even just future updates and patches. I think one of the most insulting moments in my time as a waning Phasmophobia fan was this moment. For those not in the know, Horror 2.0 was an update intended to basically take Phasmophobia out of its alpha state. Overhauled kills, no longer stock animations and ghost models, but proper, unique stuff. A proper set of Phasmophobia assets to make the game truly Phasmo. For those of you who also don't know, this update was announced in 2022. Even if not for the office fire the team had in 2023, we are still 3 years on from the announcement of the update for Phasmophobia that was pitched as the complete game. The thing is, I always assumed they'd been working on it in the background. I know that the team was slow, so I guess that they'd been cracking on with it for the better part of 5 years and that we'd just get some news about it at some point when it was almost ready to be released. When I saw the video of that smugly triumphant mouse cursor dragging the Horror 2.0 Jira board node into the ideation column, implying that was the first time in the game's history that the team had even turned their eyes to the full final release of Phasmophobia, after 5 years of delays and silence and meaningless updates, I was like, damn, you guys are mental. You really should have kept this to yourself. I don't know what kind of fanfare they expected for an announcement like this, but people weren't happy. Like, it was like the team wanted a pat on the back for now thinking about beginning to do something they had promised to do several years ago. I think this would be manageable if the team weren't so ardently averse to modding. If you mention modding in the Reddit or Discord communities, you're probably gonna get banned. It is totally against their rules to make mods for the game. I've seen people get permabanned for asking about whether or not older versions of the game are available, because streamers are allowed to play on them, although those bans were lifted after community outcry. If players were able to make their own mods for player enjoyment, or even just to pitch new mechanics for the game that could potentially be integrated in, that would be fine. But the devs are sitting there like, no updates, only play. You're not allowed to make your own ghost types, maps, or equipment. I mean, we have no plans to do that either, and we won't be implementing anything you've asked for. But if you sit tight for the next 8 months, we've had our one developer make it so you can grind 800 hours to change the wallpaper in the lobby to stripes. And yeah, we will act as though that's the second coming of Christ. The thing is, modding is a really effective way to figure out what your user base wants. Minecraft and Skyrim mods add a ton of depth to the game, visually and narratively. Marvel Rivals mods introduce reams of shitpost adjacent skins, indicating that the player base wants funny, non-canon skins. Stardew Valley mods often introduce things like expanded dialogue for beloved characters, indicating that the player base want further immersion in a world they love. As a developer, you can look at mods as another branch of feedback, rather than some insulting step on your territory. They're another way to see how your players get fulfillment from the games they play and what could be missing from the core experience. You can locate quick wins. You can even integrate the most popular mods into your game over time, allowing console players to have access to these positive changes. You can see what players are using mods to remove, whether noises or visuals are annoying or difficult to understand. You can see which accessibility options you're missing. Mods are a great way for the community to stay engaged by picking and choosing more maps, ghost types, and difficulty settings. And no, I'm not talking about cheating, I'm talking about modding. Minecraft introduced a whole storefront for mods to encourage that community, even on consoles. Skyrim integrated some mods into the 10-year anniversary release. Marvel Rivals has zoomed down the silly skin track and now, for better or worse, puts out mad stuff. Phasmophobia does nothing but guard its IP like a dog, too precious to allow even its most devout fanbase anywhere near it, and that I don't think it will serve them well in the long term as the gameplay continues to stagnate and bare minimum occasional updates continue to alienate. I do not understand this open hostility against people who want to make your game for you, while you continue to sit back and not do very much. It's probably a case of not wanting to get shown up on your Unity store asset flip when a capable modder comes in and doubles the game's content in a matter of weeks. Cynical manipulation more broadly applies to the live service genre as a concept, but it's something I find extra eye-rolling when it comes to horror-themed live service games. There's little more exhausting than getting dropped into a labyrinth of tense, miserable anxiety to get told that for my task today I'm going to need to throw 3 bricks and take 1 ghost photo. So let's get into that. So on the whole, seasonal events in live service games are trash because they typically demonstrate that live service games are built on such shallow, simple premises that they cannot bear the weight of any modification to that premise. Now, I respect games for trying new things. Dead by Daylight's yearly masquerade is thankfully ending, as it, for reasons I couldn't comprehend, attracted the weirdest killer players I've ever seen. I guess it's limited time, so you want to get as many masquerade coins as possible, but it goes on for like a month, so you have plenty of time to play the game and do your challenges and get your coins, and I assume unlock every single event unlockable cosmetic. Even so, we didn't last a day on this mode because killers were playing like someone had a gun to their head if they didn't wipe out all the survivors every match, so we ended up on the receiving end of a lot of toxic, cheap behaviour. We'll talk more about what I think of stuff like tunneling, camping, and slugging, which are all terms used to describe behaviour that is frowned upon in Dead by Daylight. But all behaviour is frowned upon in Dead by Daylight, so it's hard to nail exactly what I should be mad at. Even as a 4-man group, our weaker teammates were getting bullied out of the game pretty hard, no one was having fun, and we ended up bailing on the mode. Unhooking my mate with 10 hours in the game, and then watching a ghoul 2 jump over to us, chase him again until he went down, and then shake his head down at him like he'd been shown a lesson, was pretty hard to justify to a new player. We took a lot of breaks in those days. I heard they're doing something different next year, which I appreciate. Although Dead by Daylight plays with its own formula a lot and certainly has the most unique events of our case study today, it still highlights how little power there is in these games to mix it up. When you base your entire concept on one extremely simple gameplay loop, you realise just how difficult it is to change it. And when you take into account that Dead by Daylight is an extremely difficult game to balance, you find that a lot of these events don't hit. The Lights Out event, where games were played in the dark, puts all survivors at a disadvantage even with a focus on stealth. Alternatively, the Blood Generator event, which swapped the typical repair a generator gameplay with fill a generator with buckets of blood from a nearby source, often saw these sources spawn right next to each other, allowing survivors to be out of a match within a matter of minutes. I respect Dead by Daylight for experimenting, but even with these attempts to innovate on the formula, it's obvious that live service games don't lend themselves to innovation because their infrastructure is so tightly wound around its core concept. Outlast Trials' Winter Chills event has you complete the same trials and challenges one might normally attempt, only at set intervals you get an on-screen ice effect to indicate that your character is beginning to freeze. The only way you can stop yourself from taking damage here is by climbing into a hiding spot. This ends up playing like musical chairs, and it was initially exciting, but the novelty soon wore off, especially for more impatient members of the team who remarked that it added more stopping and starting to a gameplay loop already full of them. Remember when I said the chases in Outlast Trials are so frequent and easy that it feels like having to answer your front door every time you sit down to eat? In the Winter Chills event, it's that, and also every 30 seconds you have to stand still for 30 seconds. Just more and more hurdles in the way of your objective. Once the thrill of finding a hiding spot dissipates, it's just you and the barrel. We had 1 or 2 goes on this mode, and then we'd seen basically everything it had to offer. Other seasonal events, like Primetime, just adds more enemies to the map. The program Geister event just just adds more variables to the trials you already do. More enemies, more hallucinations, and more imposters. It's a good effort, but we didn't love it. Live service games are always so proud to announce each of their seasonal events. Often they count down to it, but you get the update come in, it takes like 2 hours to download, you log in, and every time you're just playing the exact same game as normal but with a different coat of paint. So when I posed the questions, which live service games do you play and what do you like or dislike about live service games on the community tab of my channel, I saw one commenter say that live service games felt like a second job and that made them feel bitter. Like their time was being actively wasted in order to grind coins for in-game bullshit, having to return for daily, weekly and seasonal tasks to avoid missing out on said bullshit and to make meaningful progress. Another commenter responded, I play basketball every week. That's maintenance in the same way as a daily task. All hobbies require daily maintenance. Gaming is a hobby. It's perfectly valid to be asked to do daily tasks to maintain your hobby. At first I agreed with that. And then I thought about it for a bit and I stopped agreeing with it. Like, I'm not opposed to live service games. They're low effort games in my eyes. A high effort game is a game series like Mass Effect, where you invest yourself in a story and characters, and there's a wider codex to understand, there's context, there's history, there's timelines to read, there's moral choices to make that have consequences, and those consequences can carry on through games, and there's all sorts, and it's something that you are kind of expected to sit down and invest time in, and you need to, you kind of want to be there for a few hours to really get into what's going on. It's not really a hop-on, hop-off game, 5 minutes at a time. Whereas low-effort games are these shorter games where they're like match-based, I don't have to listen to anything, I can just hop in and out. If I get home from work and I've got like an hour before bed, I can sit and just play a couple of these games. Like, I quite like live service games. I'm not fundamentally against the concept, I'm not just a super biased hater. I like them, I see their value, and I enjoy them. That said, I don't think this is a fair assessment. Playing basketball is a hobby, yes. Playing Outlast Trials with your mates is also a hobby. But for this to be an equivalent comparison, it's not the case of equating Outlast's daily challenges to like a weekly basketball match. Playing Outlast Trials with your mates every Wednesday for a few hours would be the equivalent. But in this case, the initial commenter was going, daily and weekly tasks are a waste of time and feel like a second job. For this to be equivalent, we have to compare them more literally. A weekly basketball sesh is great. Now imagine if every day you had a little pop-up that told you that you needed to walk down to the court, shoot 5 hoops, buy a drink from the vending machine and high-five 2 members of staff at the leisure centre. As you leave, you're handed a coupon that says you earned 25 hoop bucks. You look at what you can buy with that. Ah, for 25 hoop bucks you can put your hair in a ponytail from now on, if you choose, or you can leave it as it is. Oh, that girl over there playing basketball with pigtails? No, sorry, you can't have that. She earned the right to wear her hair in pigtails because she did the 2021 Hoop de Loop seasonal event, and that was earned by exchanging 500 ball coins, which was that seasonal event's currency. You can't earn any more hoop bucks today, but if you come by tomorrow, we'll give you another list of 3 arbitrary tasks. Things like giving a fellow player a thumbs up, sitting on the bench for 2 minutes total, or bouncing a ball 50 times. Maintaining hobbies is important. Playing matches of Dead by Daylight with your foreman is a great way to build communication skills and practice the game. I'd argue that's the equivalent to a basketball match in what it teaches and what skills it improves. But daily and weekly tasks are arbitrary. Sure, there might be something to gain by traipsing down to the court every single day and spending 11 minutes doing 3 arbitrary tasks to earn your hoop bucks. You might get some benefits, you might improve your skills by 0.00001% each time, which surely adds up. But does it also kind of massively take the piss? Doesn't it also demonstrate a total disrespect for your time? I mean, you don't have to go every day, and obviously eventually you will stop going, or stop going every day, but if you don't go every day, you'll miss out on the 1000 hoop bucks fluorescent skin on the hoop pass, since it expires every 12 weeks, and if you paid £10 to unlock the premium hoop pass, you'd be wasting your own money not to be going every day. If you're playing a few live service games at once, there is an expectation you'll log in daily if you want everything. If you don't want to log in daily, you don't have to, but you will miss out, and that's what these engagement tactics are so cynically based on. Live service games are so insecure that you'll forget about them if you're not constantly being pressured into returning, that they seem to forget players will log in every day anyway if the game is good. If you give players a reason to log in every day, or quite often, they will. Unfortunately, you can either exploit them through FOMO and manipulate them through sunk cost or time-limited rewards, or you can make a good game, which is worth loyal difficulty, and we all know which route these companies choose every single time. And I think it's okay to be irritated by that. I find it eye-rolling that these games feel as though they're entitled to my time, so much so that they use this subliminal carrot and stick approach. I don't even care that much for carrot, but I hate stick, and I hate getting back into the game and seeing that I missed out on the glittery pink carrot because I didn't log in on February 14th, 2022 and play then. At least with basketball, it's good physical in-person exercise, great for health and fulfilling social needs. My daily tasks in Outlast Trials were things like throw 7 bricks, use 2 health drinks, use your rig 1 time. I don't think many skills are being polished there, even if I get a different hat for it. Weirdly, I feel like this can have the adverse effect of totally putting you off the game. When Overwatch became Overwatch 2 and I tried to get all the trophies a second time, I had this weird problem where I couldn't get the play with a friend trophy because it was tied to a spray you unlock, not the actual action of playing with a friend, and I already had that spray, so the trophy wouldn't unlock. I had to make a new account with a new phone number, which I was then locked into for 1 year because you can only change the account associated with your PlayStation every 365 days. But I'd missed like 3 battle passes worth of stuff, and when I had the option to go back to my original account after that year was over, I would lose my other account's worth of stuff. And I felt kind of deflated that it was impossible for me to 100% the game now, so I just ended up losing my love for it and I stopped caring about that so much. Anyone who's ever used Snapchat can tell you that streaks are a great way of keeping you coming back daily until you break them by accident, then you suddenly disengage from the fatigue of it and you realise that you haven't used the app in like 15 years. Personally, I hate the existence of daily tasks. Not even as a login incentive, but literally the tasks, I hate them. If I had a daily boost for my first 5 games played, for example, I'd be fine with that, because it's also a deterrent from overdoing it, like when Nintendo games politely suggest you go outside for a walk after playing them for too long. Having diminishing returns on a daily game is fine by me, helps me keep things moving. But it's not the daily nature necessarily that bothers me. It's opening Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed and in lieu of a story, any writing whatsoever, being told that I need to pick up 10 fungus. It's opening Outlast Trials and being told that I need to smash 5 windows. It's opening Phasmophobia and being told that I need to get a ghost to step in salt 3 times. It's opening Dead by Daylight and saying that I need to get 2 people off the hook safely. It's this strange patronising insistence on keeping me engaged with like petty menial tasks, instead of just encouraging valid personal investment. It's easy to create this false impression of investment when you have players ticking tasks off lists, but again, this easy route proves to be the most cynical, the most manipulative. Why give me a valid reason to feel invested and enjoy playing your game frequently when you can just give me a list of things that I need to do inside of a week and then send me on my way? I feel patronised when I log into Outlast Trials and it's like, hey, we'll give you 50 extra gore coins if you use your rig twice in 1 match. Do you think you can do that for me, buddy? Doesn't that sound like a ton of fun? Because no, that's literally the gameplay loop. You clearly lack faith in your game to entertain if you need to give me incentives to load it up. Personally, I would pardon these kinds of challenges if they were actually challenges. Like meaningful challenges requiring skill and strategy. Unfortunately, live service gameplay is too shallow for actual challenges, especially ones that may require specific maps or enemies or group coordination. Live service games are too entitled to this assumption that they deserve to last forever to think of anything beyond the most basic daily challenges. And just enough of a reminder that you might miss out on something completely missable, completely lost forever if you don't log in consistently in this time. And just a few more ghost doubloons and you can unlock the yellow t-shirt, which is limited edition. Like, get over yourself. And if it's not daily, weekly, or seasonal tasks, it's bold-faced grind. It's here's the same gameplay loop over and over again forever. It will always be the same, also we've implemented reasons to do it for hundreds of hours. I feel like these games overestimate their playability. Just put the blinkers on and go, yeah, we're totally worth thousands of hours of effort. Sometimes, for some people, they are, but some people have played thousands of hours of Outlast 1 and 2. A single-player game most people will play once. When I look at the subreddit of Outlast Trials and see people with 3,000 hours on it, I'm like, yeah, that totally checks out. It's totally reasonable to have a favourite game that you play every day, because every game will be someone's favourite game. I don't think it's a mark of quality that some guy from Wyoming has played 5,000 hours of Dead by Daylight. That doesn't really tell me anything. Some people have that in GTA's offline mode. Some people have that on Dark Souls. I play Phasmophobia every day. Alright buddy, I had 800 hours on Harvest Moon DSQ. That's life. Sometimes a game just gets you right. Genuinely, I'm happy you found something you like so much. One of the ways Phasmophobia Phasmophobia bloated its game was by adding a prestige system. At level 100 you can prestige. This will reset your level to 0 and you can go again. If you want to grind out quickly, there are strategies you can do that are not fun but are effective, typically involving resetting a small map called Camp Woodwind on the hardest difficulty over and over again, trying to guess the ghost on 0 evidence. I don't do that because I'm not yet desperate enough to, I just play the game normally when I fancy, but after 100 hours I'm only just getting close to level 90. At the same time, I'm working towards first prestige in Call of Duty Black Ops 3's multiplayer, which is earned at level 55. At roughly 1 level per hour, way more game modes, way more engaging matches, I'll hit that in half the time it will take me to prestige in Phasmophobia. I don't mind a prestige system, but setting it to level 100, which takes well over 100 hours to hit, is quite mean. We already play the game on 0 evidence. We've kind of maximised the difficulty we can apply to ourselves. 100 level prestiges is the end result of uncalculated bloat intended to stretch out the gaming experience in lieu of adding anything substantial. It's just a goal that they give you to reach for no reason. And there's a trophy for hitting 3rd prestige. I can't tell if that's worse than the Gold Apocalypse run. It genuinely took me less time to hit Master Rank 200 on Monster Hunter Iceborne. I've talked enough about having to grind out for story in Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, so I won't do that again here. But I want to remind you that that exists as an actual mechanic, a purely time-wasting mechanic intended to have you sitting in the gaming waiting room before you can access another chapter of a story that you paid for, and I'm very cross about that. Grinding in the endgame, sure, but grinding to begin the game? Insane. Finally, Outlast Trials catalogs, i.e. their battle pass. Now, these are free, which is nice, but holy moly they are bloated. The Outlast Trials catalogs work on that weird system some live service games implement, where items on the catalog aren't unlocked automatically, but rather by spending XP. Say, for example, I'm playing Overwatch and I'm leveling up the battle pass. There's not much I want until the 3rd page, which has a cool Widowmaker skin. I play the game as normal until I get to page 3, at which point I go over to the battle pass, see I've finally unlocked the cool skin, and equip it. Outlast Trials doesn't function that way. You grind levels for XP currency, which you use to buy items on the catalogue. Every item on every page must be purchased with that XP before you can unlock the next page. The best items on each page cannot be purchased until you have bought all the minor items. I have like 60 unlocked profile pictures on Outlast Trials, and I mean they're profile pictures. You can only ever have one selected and nobody gives a shit, so I spent ages buying all this bunk just to get to the next page of the catalogue, and most of them will never be used. The same goes for the t-shirts and shorts I was unlocking just so I could get the cool outfits on later pages. The best skins are real purchases though, obviously. I don't mind that too much since most of this game is free, but I just thought that was worth mentioning. Each major catalogue can only be completed one at a time. Timed, temporary, seasonal catalogues can be completed with their own currency earned separately from the main game's currency. There are like 8 different kinds of currency, and these catalogues are all insanely grindy. By the time I got every trophy on Outlast Trials, I was almost 50 hours deep, and I had only just finished the first catalogue, the beginner catalogue, the introduction catalogue. That's crazy to me, that kind of bloat, that entitlement. To complete all the base catalogues, all those cosmetic options I likely wouldn't wear, would take up to 200 hours. Do you think your game is worth 200 hours? Do you think it's a satisfying, worthwhile use of a player's time to grind so hard for these scraps that they'll never wear? Live service games work on this assumption that they'll last forever, and therefore need to create enough quote-unquote content to last forever. We always assume that what we're making will be infinite. Rome fell, and you think I want to play 200 hours of a game for a skin I won't wear? Okay, bud. No one ever seems to learn this lesson. You don't need to sit on your good ideas. You might not exist in a decade. You don't need to assume your players will invest 200 hours in your game. Sometimes 50 hours is enough. It's not about these things costing money, it's about this insane developer hubris that your game is entitled to a certain amount of dedication when they won't even dedicate themselves to making it rewarding enough to earn that dedication. So I mentioned a while ago that I think Dead by Daylight is the game here most suited to a live service model, likely due to it being like 9 years old now, but I figure here is the best place to explain why. Number 1, every killer is a different experience to play as and against. The main thing that aids Dead by Daylight is its variety. Killers fall into any number of different categories. often multiple. Got mobility killers, stealth killers, snowball killers, map pressure killers, anti-loopers, map control killers like territory, go again killers, definitely no-ed killers, slowdown killers, super toxic for no reason killers, counterable power killers, might be nice if you're really goofy killers, zero IQ killers, the list goes on. Stealth killers like Michael Myers, the Pig, Springtrap, and Ghostface will initially have no terror radius, the sound of a beating heart that gets more intense the closer they are to you. You have to be on your guard. They have the advantage until you see them, and if they can turn that advantage into a hit, they will, so you have to be proactive. They don't tend to have a lot of map pressure, i.e. they are often only able to be on one player at once, so the longer you can keep them busy, the better. Snowball killers like the Plague and the Oni will shit all over you if you give them an opening. The Plague vomits on parts of the environment and survivors, making them sick. Once a survivor is fully sick, they will become broken, permanently 1 HP. If they cleanse, the Plague can use her special blood vomit, which I only get when I eat too much sand, to down survivors from a distance. The Oni's base form is slow and can only begin to grow strength once he gets a hit on a survivor. The survivor will leave red orbs that the Oni can soak up, allowing him to hit his second phase, at which point he can charge around the map and one-shot unprepared survivors. Both killers have abilities that make it extremely hard to hide from them, and once the wheels start turning, it's hard to put the brakes on. It's about playing efficiently, looping well, and denying them the map pressure that they're gunning for. Definitely no-ed killers are killers who play like losing as a direct attack on their personhood, and always run the cheapest perks, namely no one escapes death, hence the acronym. No-ed is a perk that allows killers to one-shot survivors in that frantic window of time between all the generators being completed and the survivors escaping through the exit gates. This will always be a spirit or a wraith player, just fundamentally the meanest people you've ever met. I couldn't tell you why. Sometimes this will be Clown, Legion, Huntress, or Nemesis, but that's a bit more rare. And then there are killers that you never see, like the Lich, or the Dredge, or the Hag, who end up being really fun experiences because you're just sprinting around in a panic for the duration of the game, never having played against them, not knowing what they do, or why the wrinkled man can put pallets upright. Those are the best games. You never escape alive, but they're always the most fun. Go again killers are killers like the Blight, the Nurse, the Ghoul, the most powerful killers in the game in the right hands, especially Blight for some reason. I hate Blight because they shit all over your team and make sure to carry you to the hatch before killing you. Ghouls are always shaking their heads down at you. Nurses get away with camping because they can basically teleport to any survivor they want. I always imagine they're being piloted by some 15-year-old boy, clipped for the delight of his 18-follower TikTok account, and somehow it makes me angrier. Basically, it's hard to get tired of Dead by Daylight, even if you're just a generator bunny, because the constant rotation of killers means a constant rotation of playstyles. In Phasmophobia, every ghost plays functionally the same in the investigation phase. There's a fun build-up as you learn how they work, but there's a ceiling to that, and once you hit that ceiling, between like 50 and 70 hours, depending on how much you're interested in learning, that's kind of it. 50 to 70 hours is a crazy, fantastic amount of time to enjoy a game for, but not when it's a game that's intended to be played forever. Having a ghost who shows 6 fingers in UV handprints and a ghost who screams on the parabolic mic makes no difference to the gameplay loop, which will always be the same. Some have slightly different behaviour when hunting, especially the Deergen, which we've discussed, but largely hunts involve squatting in some corner of the map and counting down from 60 seconds until you're free to go. The gameplay loop is identical, satisfaction is earned from correct guesses and clutch escapes, but these things eventually bore your average player, and then there's nothing else. Fantastic concept for a game, insufficient implementation for a live service infinite loop. The Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed gameplay is utterly woeful. At least you have the option to play as the ghost if you want, but even then you have 2 different games to play in comparison to Dead by Daylight's multitudes. Outlast Trials also just has one gameplay style. Enemies in maps cannot be killed and will one-shot you on higher difficulties, so you can't play with wildly different builds. You might have stealth builds, healing builds, and I don't know, lockpick builds, but by and large it's exactly the same stuff. Number 2, they mix it up as much as possible, experiment and try new things. The Dead by Daylight team tries things, sees how it goes, and then takes it or leaves it. Some game modes like Lights Out and Blood Generators might feel a bit too one-sided, but that's not to suggest they can't be improved, tweaked, experimented with. Maybe they'll make a return one day, maybe they won't, but the Dead by Daylight team do appear to take community feedback on board some of the time, and may use this feedback to improve future events. The 2 vs 8 mode, which pits pits 2 killers against 8 survivors was immensely popular, as was Chaos Shuffle, which sees every person on the team given a random selection of perks, forcing them to adapt. The masquerades were great ideas, especially for celebrating anniversaries, but for whatever reason just encouraged killers to play at their absolute meanest, and abilities like remote hooks often resulted in them having insane advantages over teams of survivors who were less likely to be given abilities as useful as the ability to literally click to teleport a survivor to a hook without needing to walk them there. I think the fact that Dead by Daylight feels complete in terms of base game content, perks, characters, and maps means that the team has more flexibility with experimentation. It doesn't always work, but you can always learn something from it. Either new ideas for future innovations, or the literal psychology of Dead by Daylight. Like, what upsets people, what puts people off, but what keeps them coming back, what gives people a sense of satisfaction. Why things work the way they do, or why they don't work, how the developers might have expected them to, and how to tweak the gameplay with updates that will make the experience more generally enjoyable. Outlast Trials' Winter Chills event basically takes the current gameplay loop but forces you to sit still for 20 seconds every minute or so. That's quite boring. The Geister and Primetime events just take the exact gameplay loop you play and add more enemies or other variables to it. Innovations occur within the gameplay loop as it already exists. There's no effort to experiment with the loop itself. Phasmophobia's events only seek to add an extra step to the gameplay loop and offer no individualized reward. If enough players contribute to a centralized score, which they will extend the deadline on if the community fails to hit it, they consider the community event a success and everyone who participated gets a card or a trophy to say they did it. The Blood Moon event takes Blood Moons, which are already a rare weather event in the game, and applies them permanently to 2 chosen maps. The gameplay loop occurs exactly the same as the base game Blood Moon weather event. Enemies become more aggressive. Only with this event, Blood Moon totems are added to maps. Taking a photo of them destroys the totems and you gain 1 point towards the community goal. This is it, the same gameplay loop as normal, but with the addition of taking photos of static, extra items that occur naturally within the chosen maps. For the Easter event, the Cursed Hollow, players were directed to shine their dots projector at, again, static items on select maps to summon forest minions, which would offer some minor buffs to the player and or the ghost, but nothing else. Shining dots at these minions would increment a community score. And the Christmas Holidays event turned all the ghosts into Krampus, so he jingles, which is really cool, but all it is again is just interacting with static items on the map, jack-in-the-boxes this time for points. TLDR, Dead by Daylight innovates on the gameplay loop itself, Outlast Trials tries to innovate on variables inside the gameplay loop, and Phasmophobia adds 1 extra step to the exact gameplay loop you always play. One of these games has a total revenue of over $500 million. Number 3, they have a big team and reinvest in frequent DLC and improvements. When we imagine a live service, we imagine a living, breathing, responsive animal. Dead by Daylight gets fairly significant updates every 3 months, new survivors, killers, maps, and occasionally all of the above, meaning it does feel like a live service. When Outlast Trials slaps Winter Chills on for a few weeks, it's the same Winter Chills as last time, same as program Geister and Primetime. It doesn't feel new, it just feels more like an automated calendar of rotating game modes. Investing in licensed killers must come at a huge cost, especially companies like Wizards of the Coast, which to me have a reputation for anti-consumer, anti-everything practices. Behaviour don't have to do that. They've proven, with the exception of Skull Merchant, who was the end result of their realization that sometimes people want to fuck the killers and leaning way too hard into trying to make a mummy killer that it ended up being cringe, that they're great at making their own original killers and survivors. They reinvest in licensed killers, often voiced by their original actors, because the community begs them to, and it's nice. Obviously it's not an act of charity, they make their money as a business will, but it's nice to see so much investment into doing things that seem like a massive pain in the arse. The Hellraiser license seemed like a piss take to rival all piss takes, and they eventually lost the license arbitrarily because there's a new Hellraiser game coming out soon, and apparently Pinhead can't exist in 2 places at once, but I mean, they still tried. They are always responding to people on the subreddit, via Twitter and other social media, and not those annoying AI responses either. Having an emphasis on community outreach does make a game feel like a live service. Phasmophobia's Discord mods have built such a draconian reputation for their permaban now, laugh at you for appealing later approach that even if they're no longer like that, I'm too scared to go near the Discord, I don't dare. Their communal outreach only extends to their official affiliate streamers who are permitted access to older versions of the games and receive a lot lot of special double standard treatment. The only time the general player sees interaction is typically when they're advertising a new makeshift plushie that feels limited edition, buy now or never, but then you can buy it again next year. Dead by Daylight runs tons of community contests. My favourites are the cosmetic contests, which allow fans of the game to submit their own ideas for survivor and killer cosmetics. And AI submissions are banned. Woo! Seeing the winners announced and then seeing them show up on the free Rift Pass later is exciting. It makes the experience of interacting with this game feel very personal and involved. I also don't mind buying the Rift Pass either, especially since you get enough coins on one to fund the next one, and every tier offers tangible rewards and super cool unique cosmetics. Outlast Trials catalogues are 60% guff, and the unlockable cosmetics in Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed were an absolute joke, essentially taking like a basic wardrobe and splitting it out into tiers that need to be grinded for to be unlocked by level. I'm not grinding to level 64 to unlock mint green hair Ghostbusters, sorry. It's easy to forget that you physically can't use almost everything you unlock, especially when a lot of it is filler to plug up levels between better quality cosmetics. It doesn't matter if there are 40 t-shirt options Ghostbusters, I'm probably just gonna wear one or two. Dead by Daylight's community managers are good-humoured, receptive, and while the answers they offer can sometimes be very annoying, they're at least upfront about things. Maybe they change their mind later, maybe not, but you can expect answers. There'll also often be several patches or smaller hotfixes between each update to balance killers, survivors, and perks. And Dead by Daylight has spaghetti code, which, I won't explain it because it's fucking boring, but to be short, it's much easier to break Dead by Daylight than fix it, so these people are working overtime. When I see on my Twitter feed that something new is coming to Dead by Daylight, I get really excited. Even if it's a killer I'll end up hating or not playing, I know there's a good chance I'm gonna see something super cool, like Sadako or The Dredge, who I loved. I don't like FNAF, but I was so excited to see Springtrap finally come to Dead by Daylight. I get excited because the return on my emotional investment is always worthwhile. Even if what I get is not to my tastes, I know A, it will contribute to the wider development of the meta and killer survivor roster, especially if there's a fun new map, and B, there will always be something again in a few months, and something major, so I don't feel super let down knowing that that was probably going to be all we get for updates for the next year, and I have to wait an untold amount of time for another opportunity to get something I might want to play. Number 4, going against human players gives the game personality, even if that personality sucks. I appreciate that having AI enemies future-proofs a game, but having AI enemies in a live service game feels like running on a treadmill as I am shown JPEG images of a race course. The enemies of Outlast Trials are just patrolling nuisances. They see you, they shout, the music sting happens, they run at you, maybe they hit you, you hide, and depending on the difficulty they'll stagger right past you muttering about how their head hurts or whatever, or they'll grab you by the ponytail and yank you out of your hiding place to get battered again, rinse and repeat. In its current state, human-controlled ghosts would be awful for Phasmophobia, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't make a compelling potential game mode one day, and by one day I mean the year 2454 at the current rate of innovation in that IP, but yeah, one day. Heck, you could even steal Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed ideas for human-controlled ghosts, tweak it a bit, see how it runs. Still, for the record, I think Phasmophobia works totally fine with AI ghosts, it's just the rest of it that's undercooked. Going against human players in Dead by Daylight gives that game a lot of personality, even if that personality can be toxic and miserable, and it allows for innumerable outcomes that keep each match feeling somewhat different, even if that difference can be, we were slogged at 5 generators and left to bleed out while the killer spun around on top of us, so I'm going to find peace in my personal belief that his parents are getting divorced, and this is the only way he feels any kind of control over his situation. Number 5. I don't think Dead by Daylight's gameplay would translate well to a story game. It was a tragedy that Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed wasn't a co-op story game, even with just 2 players. It was such a shame to load up the game and find myself handed a platter of daily tasks for a gameplay loop with the satisfaction equivalent of gently guiding my grandfather into my grandmother. The draw of the Ghostbusters movies arguably was not the scene with the 4 dudes tethering ghosts. Like, the main draw of that movie isn't the beam itself, it was 4 friends united together using their personal strengths to overcome unknowable supernatural forces. It was about using the power of science to combat the horrors of the afterlife. It was about peeking beyond the veil and seeing that weird, creepy creepy place in the void with all the altars and all the dust. The beam scene is exciting because it's the culmination of hard work, the power of friendship, and the threat of the stakes if things go wrong. Taking the beam and making it into a series of 3-minute jobs is like hearing me say I love having a good poo and just handing me a log on a plate. It's not the physical matter that I enjoy, it's the pizza I had the night before, the fullness, the rumbling, the anticipation, and then the relief of the 5-minute birth the day after as I grip the side of the bath, my pyjamas discarded on the floor in front of me, a hot shower already running, ready to embrace me. Without all of that context, it's just a dump, and that's exactly how Ghostbusters felt, like a big, cold poo. I felt the same about Outlast Trials, which took beloved components of Outlast games and just put me in a big room with them. I could press a button for a chase, I could press a button for gore, I could press a button and hear scientists say mean things about me, but it's like if I put all those things in a bucket and spilled them on the floor. There's no structure to them, no tight, compact, crafted experience, just 100 experiences with some rough inclusion of each component. Like if I ordered a wig and you just sent me 15 envelopes with various amounts of loose hair in them. Dead by Daylight, on the final hand, involves survivors trying to complete 5 generators and escape through exit gates. Functionally, it's a game of chase, except you have to stand still for 60 seconds 5 times in locations your chaser can see through walls, generators, and then stand still by the exit doors. I don't think this would translate well to a story game. I don't think it could translate well too much beyond what it already is, so it may as well be what it is now. I like it. Now that we've talked about all the good parts of Dead by Daylight, we're gonna get into reason 5 of why live service horror is a bad idea. And that's the live service community. Can you guess where we're gonna go now? I can't tell if I've just been overly glazing Dead by Daylight or if I'm just giving it the credit it deserves. Or both, maybe both. They're not mutually exclusive. Either way, it's time to talk about the community aspect of live service horror and the impact community has on live service horror. It's no secret that Dead by Daylight has an awful community. Everyone feels like a victim. Everyone feels like they're on the receiving end of great malice, and that's because they are, technically speaking, and it frustrates me to see players unable to look past their own victimhood, to just dissect what's happening to them in-game. So we load in with 1 killer and 4 survivors. The killer will be themed and unable to communicate beyond head shaking and in some cases teabagging. They sneer, cackle, laugh, hiss, rear up, and most importantly, stab you multiple times. Their characters, themed, take great pleasure in that, even if the person on the other side is just a normal guy, playing a few games until his mates get online. Survivors see the way the killers leer at them, especially now with the base kit Mori that allows killers to brutally, smugly murder whoever is left alive, and naturally they interpret it as a personal attack. Like, I totally get it, it's hard to look at killer behaviour, a deeply personal expression of smiling, cruel hatred, and not assume it's directed at them, even if it's not directed at them. This makes survivor players always feel as though they're being bullied, even if the killer is, like, having a lovely time. Sometimes they are, sure. There are plenty of toxic players, and they're always wraiths, but on the whole it's just some person. It's hard to separate the actions being done to you literally from the player on the other side who is just trying to get you out of the game so that they can win. On the other side we have the killer. The psychology of killer players is also kind of totally messed up. Firstly, you're outnumbered. It's 4-on-1 and any killer can tell you that a team of good survivors is going to make your life a living hell, a gauntlet of humiliation. I've been brought to tears on killer before when trying to learn characters like the nurse and the Oni. Survivors, feeling sore from the killer behaviour I've just mentioned, kind of forget that you're just a person, so they'll take out that hurt on you and absolutely run you ragged. Stuns, teabagging, flashlight spamming, holding the game hostage even after they've won just to try and upset you a bit more. Maybe they're just assholes, and maybe they're just responding to the kind of cruelty they struggle to separate from killer players themselves. Maybe live service horror relies on someone to play a villain, even if they don't know they're playing it. Either way, this creates a cycle that gets worse and worse year on year. I came back to Dead by Daylight when the Springtrap DLC released after a break of a year or so. Playing killer games makes me feel sick and nervous these days. Like, I used to love it, but I've had a few too many public humiliation rituals that I've got this weird anxiousness now whenever I go to play killer. Instead, I picked up Survivor and played with my friends. I noticed that killers were never ever giving hatch, the secret door that always spawns when there's only 1 player left. Killers would close the hatch, find me, and then kill me on the spot. I was confused. Back when I used to play, killers would always carry you to the hatch or wave at you as you ran for it yourself, or even open the exit gates for you. In the last 100 hours of playing Dead by Daylight, I've been given the hatch twice, and I've been given the exit gates once because I played the loot for a night. I'm more likely to just get torn to shreds on the floor. I looked online to see why, and most people are of the opinion that killers are so sick of toxic survivors they don't believe people deserve the hatch anymore. I would also assume that killers would think a quick Mori would be fun for both of us, save us some time, look really cool and in the game early, but as a survivor player, I feel like they're so mean-spirited when I get Mori'd. It feels mean. In a game like this, where one person is in a team of 4, outnumbering the other team, and the solo player is playing like a sneering Albert Wesker or the Unknown, it's hard to discern intent from both sides. Without emotes, survivors can point, beckon, or teabag. How do you say please or thank you? Killers have even less options, and I'm so scarred by pretend friendly killers who are running endgame no-ed builds and will rip us all to shreds the second the last gen pops that I don't dare sit there teabagging with a friendly ghost face. I've learned my lesson. The problem with Dead by Daylight that compounds this inbuilt feeling of hostility is that it is a tremendously difficult game to balance. Apparently there's invisible matchmaking, but I'll pick up a new killer for the first time and get matched against prestige 70+ survivors, full team, all meta builds, and get teabagged to death so brutally that I'll just pick up my little knife and go and stand in the corner until they all leave me alone. But also, few perks on Survivor feel meta anymore. Perks like Decisive Strike and Unbreakable, which prevent killers bullying the same survivor out of the game or from keeping survivors slugged in the dying state, left to bleed out while the killer spins around on top of you for 5 minutes, should be, in my opinion, base kit. Having a little skill check that allows you to wiggle free from a killer who is camping you on the hook should just be something that exists in game until there are like 2 survivors left. Survivors should be able to pick themselves up under certain conditions so they're not left to bleed out for several minutes while the Milkman Hillbilly rushes around the map. We're in an aura reading phase of Dead by Daylight now, where under certain conditions killers can see you through walls. If you run an aura reading build, you can see survivors more or less constantly. Survivors don't have any way of countering this, as the perk Distortion was severely nerfed. Not much feels meta. Like, survivors have all ended up running alive because it feels like the only way to get out of a chase these days, since most maps have had a lot of their looping areas heavily simplified. And I get it, it's hard to balance these things. Still, I do think things could be improved by pitting people of similar ability against one another, not a fresh-faced Sadako player against a group of people who have played every day for 9 years, and vice versa. The psychology of the game is in such friction with the player base too. Behaviour Games have stated that they believe any match where a killer gets 2 kills is a win, but that's hard to quantify, and even as someone who lets the last survivor go most of the time, it doesn't feel like a win when I get 2k, or even 3, especially when killer adept trophies require a 4k, and especially when your 2 escapists are teabagging and flashlights spamming you at the exit gate, trying to goad you into one last slap. The thing is, killers shouldn't feel entitled to a 4k perfect sweep every match, but it does feel like you've lost unless you get one. I don't know if there's a way to improve killer feedback so that a 2k does feel a bit more victorious, but I do think killers feel quite embarrassed with their performance unless they get a 4k, and I think that's natural because the psychology of the game doesn't back up 2k is a win logic, nor any game, really. In attempting to get 4ks, killers pick up strategies that are considered targeted bullying and bad manners, named tunneling, camping, and slugging by the community. This is totally up for debate. Tunneling is when a killer hooks a survivor and then just goes straight back to take them down again when they get unhooked. It's considered bad manners to tunnel someone out of the game, when in reality we could suggest that survivors pick better times to unhook, distract the killer better, have the rest of the team focus on generators since they're being left alone, or behaviour could implement a base kit Decisive Strike to dissuade killers from seeing the freshly unhooked as easy marks. Instead, the current band-aid on this is that it's just the onus is on the killer to play an honourable game, to basically run off with their hands over their ears, to look at 2 running survivors and out of their good grace choose to target the healthy one instead of the one who is 1 HP. I understand that as a survivor these things do feel targeted, but I'd also argue that expecting your killer player to follow community-invented, unspoken and unenforced rules is quite excessive, especially if it's a casual killer player who doesn't get involved with the community. It can be mean-spirited to tunnel someone out of the game, but it's also a valid strategy. It's obviously case by case. case. Sometimes the killer is being a knob, and sometimes the survivors are unhooking their mates right in front of them and just expecting the killer to politely look the other way as a gentleman's agreement. Camping is as it sounds, a killer putting someone on the hook and then basically standing in front of them. This has been addressed somewhat with the use of a camping bar, which slowly fills if a killer is standing in a certain proximity. When it fills up, survivors can run away. I like how this encourages killers to roam, although long-range killers like the Huntress don't need to obey these rules, considering they can clock you with a hatchet from 50 feet away. Characters like Springtrap can hide in nearby doors and just get out when they know someone's on the way. This feature was a good start, but needs refinement. Slugging is probably my biggest pet peeve here because it's the most eye-rolling, it's the most dehumanizing. In Dead by Daylight, a killer chases you, knocks you down, and then puts you on the hook. If another survivor is nearby and liable to go for a save, the killer might try to hit them first and then down them if possible, and then just get 2 hooks instead. Like, that's the game, I don't take insane issues with that. The issue I take is when a killer will try to knock everyone down as soon as the game starts. And it'll always be a character like Hillbilly. See, some characters like the Oni are actively punished for picking up survivors, they lose their power when they pick up a survivor, so I appreciate that they might want to knock down some nearby ones first, sure, but I don't know, someone like Bubba will rush through, chainsaw everyone to the ground, and then spend 10 minutes looking for the last survivor. The amount of times I've just had to lie there watching my character bleed out, 2 survivors just lying there, none of us able to get ourselves up, fully recovered in 4 corners of the map, and the Leatherface is zooming around with his chainsaw trying to find the last player, who is hiding in a locker. You can't disconnect because you'll get a penalty, so you just have to wait. I don't begrudge tunneling or camping unless it's done to my less experienced mates, but I hate slugging. I've been in matches before that have dragged on for ages and ages and ages, like 30 minutes, just getting knocked down, picked up, carried, knocked down, picked up, knocked down, picked up, carried, because the killer wants all of us slugged at the same time for some reason. Maybe to hook us all in one go, maybe for fun, maybe to see if you just can, maybe to hold the game hostage for a while, but my god, it is so obnoxious and you will never see the gates of heaven. Overall, I think Dead by Daylight plays well, but it's got this fat to trim around the edges, just to neaten up these edge cases. Getting tunneled once is fine, but if you go against like 3 blights in a row and all of them tunnel you straight out of the game, you start to get quite fed up. And this is the issue, because while these problems persist, you have a game that is, at best, self-moderated by a set of unwritten community rules. The community will assume that you know those rules. The community will not be kind to you if you are new and are not familiar. Thankfully, we don't have post-game chat on console, although messaging is obviously a thing, but some of the things I've seen PC players wish on each other is insanity. You people need to go outside and drink milk straight from the cow, I swear to god. Another problem with the asymmetry of this game is the fact that it's hard to know if you're being bullied or if you're just shit at the game. Sometimes you'll be playing killer, you'll hook someone, walk off, they get left on the hook so long that they go into stage 2, you find another chase, see the person get unhooked, finish the chase you're doing, hook the second person, the whole time like gens are being done, the survivors are winning, you'll wander around, find an injured person, down them, hook them again, and they die. You get a message accusing you of tunneling. It's not really tunneling unless I'm actively pursuing you off the hook. If you get abandoned on hook for so long that you almost die, taken off the hook, not healed, and then I find you again, that's not my problem. A lot of players will cry camping when they kind of just play like mugs. Whole teams will stand around one hook, giving me no incentive to go anywhere else. Like, I can see all 4 of you there, 1 person on the hook, 3 of you trying to go for the save. What do you want me to do? Rush off around the map and give you 30 seconds grace period before I chase someone else again? Learn how to distract and loop sometimes, I swear. The bitterness grows on both sides. You get a DM saying they hope your mum gets cancer, and you get kidnapped and assaulted. You report them to Sony, they get a 3-day comms ban, and life moves on. I had one person message me again straight off the 3-day comms ban to say even worse things because I'd got them banned. I just reported them a second time and they got banned again. Fool me once, silly Billy. On the other side, you do get fucking whiny killers too. The first time I heard the word gen rushing, I was stunned. So survivors have to finish 5 generators before they can escape. If they finish them too quickly, some killers will accuse them of gen rushing, which is bizarre. I suppose it comes from the old item survivors could use called a brand new part, which would completely automatically fix a generator. If 4 people bought one of those each in the old days, that was 4 generators finished in the first few minutes of the game, if not the first few seconds, with just 1 left to do. killers would be wrecked. I get that, sure, that was stupid, and obviously the brand new pot was incredibly nerfed and has been nerfed for years now. Nowadays, you finish 3 generators in 5 minutes and you're getting accused of gen rushing, like, oh, I'm sorry you weren't getting any hits in on any survivors or keeping them off generators at all. I'm sorry that the Detective Leon survivor baited you into an 8-minute chase. Like, what do you want me to do? Come and watch? One of the main problems with Dead by Daylight is the lack of in-game chat, be that proximity, friend chat, or global chat. The developers apparently have no intention of adding it. I understand the wish to avoid toxicity, but even without a ping system or a comms wheel of pre-built phrases, this is one of the major problems with Dead by Daylight's gameplay because it takes imbalance and stretches it out for miles. 4 solo players who physically cannot communicate with each other are an ocean's difference from 4 players all teamed up together, talking to one another in Discord, meaning full communication between every person on the map. Killers will do well in a few matches against solo players and then get rolled by 4-mans, and I totally get the upset there. You cannot balance a game for 4 solo players and 4 friends all in communication with each other. 4-man teams need less support because they accommodate for weakness by communicating, telling each other where the killer is and what's currently happening. 4-man solo players do not know where other players are, even if they can see what other players are doing, like generators, totems, chasers. They can't really see where. You don't know if a player is going to use a perk or if you need to step in, like with Deliverance, where you can automatically unhook yourself. You don't know if you should take a hit because they've almost wiggled off. You don't know what the killer is, whereas a 4-man friend group will announce it to the chat as soon as they know it. There's so much information lost. 4-man teams need less support. 4-man solos need more support. But the developers seem to balance for the upper crust of Dead by Daylight playership, and these solo players are constantly neglected, leading to frustration and alienation. It is very difficult to solo queue survivors in this game at the moment. It is miserably difficult. Sometimes me and my mates will play it as a 3-man, and we will have one solo player with us, and a solo player can just completely cost you the game. The amount of times we've had someone join us who refuses to play because they don't like the killer, or just gets into a cupboard straight off the bat and waits for us all to get killed, probably so that they can try to leave through the hatch. I don't know, it's crazy. Having even one person absent or actively griefing will cost you the game, I say like 90% of the time. I'll be honest, I love the fact that it's easier to get crows for being inactive now. Like, I never get crows. Every one of you who complains that they get crows every match now, I know you're sitting around doing fuck all, and I can't prove it, but I know it. If it was once, one crow thing, yeah, maybe a bug. But if you're like, I can't play my normal way anymore without getting punished for being inactive, and you don't touch a single generator, totem, or hook all game because you just wait for the hatch since the first minute and crawl around the edges of the map, I see you. I am gleefully kicking my feet at your recompense. This is just. The thing about Dead by Daylight is that the community do complain, but the majority of them are also reasonable about the problems with the game. Outlast Trials are pretty chill too. I've seen the subreddit, you can all come with me to Alton Towers next year. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed fans don't exist, so we don't need to worry about them. But whew, Phasmophobia players, youch. Those public lobbies are impossible to navigate. Hackers, griefers, and insane, and I mean insane abuse and toxicity. And it's like more than not abusive lobbies than it is nice lobbies. Every slur under the sun, genuinely, I don't know why a game about being nerdy and not having sex has attracted the kind of clientele I'd expect to find in a 2011 COD lobby, but here we are. Obviously, you can just leave the lobbies that are mean, and you do, but the incentive to play Lucky Dip for hours, your prize being that a stranger will call you a stupid hole, that's a hole with an L, isn't all that appealing. When I surveyed my YouTube subscribers about this topic, one of them made a compelling point. Any live service game without end-of-life support is already on life support, literally kept breathing by, in this case, hosted servers. I was like, wow, profound. And profoundly true. They are. The second these games are no longer supported, they're dead. With the Stop Destroying Video Games initiative currently picking up speed in the EU, an initiative that, quote, calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to consumers in the European Union, or related features and assets sold for video games they operate, to leave said video games in a functional playable state, I think points like these are more important than ever. If Dead by Daylight servers dropped tomorrow permanently, then that game and everything on it would be inaccessible forever. That's kind of crazy. Games made without the anticipation of the inevitable in mind are just wasting their own time. Not that these things need to be coddled for eternity, but stuff doesn't last forever, and it's valuable to have a strategy for a game that physically cannot be played locally. Outlast Trials, Phasmophobia, and God forbid Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed can all be played solo, thankfully, but what would Dead by Daylight be when the servers go down? Custom games with bots? Reams of unobtainable achievements? The trophy hunter in me cries. These games are often released unfinished anyway, plugged up with trickles of DLC across the years that follow. And that's assuming that these games don't contain licensed works, which often end up revoked with little warning, something Dead by Daylight often falls afoul of. To be fair, Dead by Daylight has enough original killers and survivors to sustain itself, which was a clever idea, but we've seen the likes of Friday the 13th fall afoul of this finicky economy of licensing bullshit and big corporate rights holders. It's an end we'll likely end up seeing for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game, if it doesn't die of starvation first. A Hellraiser game was recently announced, and I was like, oh crap, until I saw it's actually just going to be like a non-live service horror game, which I worried it would be after so many of them in these last few years. Amazing. Still, the people yearn for nostalgia, and nostalgia means licensing franchises from 20 plus years ago from rights holders who don't know what a video game is and feel cantankerous around the concept. As we've discussed, AI enemies are a lot less scary and a lot less fun than human enemies, although a lot less toxic, so you're entitled to your preferences. That said, I can't decide whether I'd rather be trundling after AI that bumbles around the map and gets stuck on the terrain, or those elite level looper survivor bots that sometimes sub in when one person rage quits, you know the ones. Sometimes you get like a post-surgery Meg Thomas who falls face first into your knife, and sometimes you get a monstrous Nancy Wheeler who spins you like a rotisserie chicken while the rest of the team polish off the final few gens. The thing that makes these live service games so communal, so human, are the players themselves. To assume your game will last forever is stupidity, plain and simple, so what's your exit plan? My editors and I were considering how best to round out this video, considering the length it's probably going to end up being, and we settled on the process of scoring the games by different factors. We sat down and figured out 5 core components of a live service horror game and decided on the following. 1. Fun factor. Is the game fun? Do I have fun playing it, solo or in a group? 2. Horror factor. Is the game scary? Is it tense? Can it somehow still be frightening, even after a long time playing? 3. Live service factor. Do I feel like I am being delivered a consistent live service? Does the game instill resentment in me when that live service is not really being delivered? 4. Long-term playability. Do all of these things work long-term? Would I be playing this either solo or with friends for a while? Does it justify its length? And 5. Grind and time-wasting manipulation. Does the game resist using cheap tactics to try to coerce me to spend time with it, or do I feel like my time is being respected? For each of these, and remember these scores are purely subjective, I'll read them out, we'll take an average, and then I'll discuss them. And I have to warn you, I don't score things very highly, so I'm not going to be super flattering to most of these games here today. Feel free to give me your scores below, but if you're one of those people that's like, oh, I think the lowest score I'd give is a 9, I'm sending you to the naughty corner because I bloody hate that. So, firstly, the Outlast Trials. For fun factor, I put a perfectly average 5. Now, I appreciate my take is subjective here. Some people take great pleasure in the repetitive nature of Outlast Trials, the fact that you can retry and refine approaches to the same trials over and over again, practicing and perfecting until you get an A+ grade, solo, on the hardest difficulty. I don't like that though. That's not to my taste, I don't like how the AI works, I don't think the objectives are very fun, and I don't think there's much variety in builds. I actually would grade it lower myself, like I found this gameplay very boring, especially since there's simply just not enough for a full team to be doing, so you're often just idly wandering the corridors, but I stuck with 5 because I can see why someone would like this. For horror factor, I chose 4. This game is not scary whatsoever, nor does it try to be. That said, it marketed itself on its fear factor, so I'll still hold it to that standard. It plugs the gap by jamming every room full of elaborate murals of gore, but you stop noticing any of it after a few hours. There's zero tension. The scariest things are the Skinnerman jump scares when you go mad. For the live service factor, I'll give Trials a 7. The game obviously has a dedicated, passionate team, putting out updates as often as the budget allows, and a rolling calendar of scheduled seasonal events. Cosmetic options skew way too far in the direction of profile avatars, of which I have like thousands now, but hey, at least it's something. I think the service is limited. I feel more like I'm on an automated schedule more often than not. It doesn't feel like a live service. but they do visibly try. For long-term playability, I'd give Trials a 4. Unless you or your mates are seriously partial to this gameplay loop, you're not going to want to stick around here for long. I feel like the majority player is going to do like one of each trial, maybe dabble in whichever seasonal event is on at the time, and maybe escape once, and then call it a day with Outlast Trials. For most games, spending 10 hours in them is a raving success, like nothing to sniff at, but for a game designed to be played much longer than that, this isn't scoring very high. Finally, for time-wasting manipulation, we'll give this game a 6. Outlast Trials has an eye-rolling catalogue system that takes well over 100 hours to complete, probably closer to 200 with 4 chapters out now, and an absolutely abysmal system of forcing you to unlock everything as you go, rather than just letting you buy the things you want. Like, just make me spend a certain amount per page to unlock the next one, or just unlock it automatically as I go. I don't want 40 profile pictures. The daily tasks are absolutely stupid, but Outlast Trials tries hard to make you feel rewarded for engaging, even if those rewards vary in satisfaction. That said, no actual content is gated. Skills need to be grinded for, but this is done with separate currency, and most skills are available to you very early on, and in my opinion the only one you really need is slippers. The grind is optional, but there's really no other incentive to play beyond these catalogues. Overall, Trials earns an average grade of 5.2. Next we move on to Phasmophobia. I think Phasmophobia's fun factor is a 6 for me, because its horror factor is a 7, especially in the beginning. For your first few hours in this game, you will be at the mercy of thick, tense suspense, silent pitch black houses, the distant creaks and taps of a home settling, or a ghost rearing to strike. You won't know your way around. Even with friends, I found my first, probably 20 hours in Phasmophobia, a gauntlet of palm-sweating terror. Even when it wears off, I'm still caught off guard by occasional moments. Phasmophobia has a lot of potential, and despite how hard I go on it, it's because I really like it and I want it to be better. This brings us to the live service factor, which I score as a 1. There is no Tooth Fairy, there is no Easter Bunny, and there is no live service in Phasmophobia. Like I said, if you wanted to consider Phasmo complete and just call it a day as a company, fine, but you seem to want to make this a compelling, thrilling live service game with frequent updates, so you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it, but if you're going to tell us that you're doing it, then just do it. You have to follow through on promises if you want your own plans to happen. Long-term playability comes in at a 6. You'll quickly realise that the best maps to play on are the smaller maps. Although the larger maps can be fun and the school is a personal favourite of mine, the optimal map for pure ghost hunting is Tanglewood, the smallest one. Even then, you'll soon tire of the endless, totally unrewarding prestige grind, and when you finally get bored enough to try the Gold Apocalypse challenge, you'll either get so lucky that you'll become insufferable, or you'll be in there long enough to see right through the smoke and mirrors of this game's mechanics and find yourself quite fed up with the whole affair. As for grind and time-wasting manipulation, I'd give this game a 5. This score is earned because Phasmophobia is too bare bones to accommodate most of the manipulation systems we see in live service today, but what we do have is so simple that it feels like a game that died years ago and now still maintains itself on pre-programmed rolling sets of challenges that show up like clockwork. There are only a few weekly challenges, I think 12 total, so these roll so much that you'll be well acquainted with them. The seasonal events are abysmal, like absolutely shocking, a waste of developer time and player time, and the daily tasks are as boring and unoriginal as any other live service game's daily tasks. Overall, Phasmophobia scores a perfectly average 5, tons of potential, disappointing management. At this point it would probably just be better as like a single purchase, not live service game, but it's still not even finished. It's still not even available as a complete product yet, so it's hard to judge, and I think you should finish the game. Next is Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, which right out of the gate scores a 2 on the fun factor. This game sits on the back of a horse made of nostalgia, relying on you to be so wrapped up in the novelty of busting all over ghosts to realise you're playing 3-minute jobs that see you walk in, hold R2 and walk out again. There's no challenge because all challenge is tied to arbitrary gear level, meaning you physically cannot do better until you have grinded for improved gear. There's no story unless you grind for story, and nothing fun to engage with. Genuinely, it feels like clocking into a 9 to 5 to play even 30 minutes of this game. Then we get onto horror factor, for which Ghostbusters scores a 2. The thing is, Ghostbusters, despite being supernaturally themed, doesn't promise actual scares, so I didn't rate it on that. Instead, I judged this score based on how much the game actually leans into this supernatural sci-fi. The visuals, the mechanics, the gameplay and kit, the ghosts you face, and found that this game possesses nothing of value. All the maps are just museums and prisons and libraries and other public places, totally disassociated from the ghosts and their droppings. Ghostbusters earned a 2 because there are a few different types of ghosts, but that's it. If you saw any screenshot of this game without the HUD and visible ghosts, you'd have no idea what you were looking at. Next, live service factor. Ghostbusters earns a 1, since it crumbled so hard under total community disinterest that it's already ceased being a live service and saw its last update in 2024. It earns a 1 because this game would have made a fantastic co-op story, but instead felt entitled to an eternal audience in return for bare minimum work. Long-term playability gets a 2. I can imagine 2 people with nothing else to play who basically use this game to shoot the shit once a week probably get a scream out of a game like this, since it's the equivalent of sitting on a park bench together and occasionally taking a sip of a drink that looks quite tasty but actually doesn't have any flavour at all. Most of the longevity of this game relies on your willingness to grind for it or your excitement at completing arbitrary weekly tasks, but so rarely does it pan out to be anything worthwhile that I assume most of the player base will drop off within the first few hours. Finally, grind and time-wasting manipulation earns a 1. This is because this game is so segmented into live service drip feed drivel that even the basic wardrobe character customizations are locked behind levels. Hair color is locked behind levels. Games across the spectrum of time and genre just give you all of the hair colors from the start. Gear simply will not be strong enough to catch ghosts, even if all 4 of you are tethering it simultaneously, until you have arbitrarily raised the level of each of its components. Each piece of gear has a few components, eliminating skill or strategy from levels that are basically just holding R2 to tether anyway. You can select from one of 3 jobs at once, but you're also directed to your contracts tab, which is just an enormous list of daily task style challenges to work through like a SATs practice paper. Take a look at our contracts, the helpful voice told me, and when I looked I just saw 30 different renditions of calm 2 NPCs in one mission and change your hairstyle once. The way this game gives you about 8 minutes of actual game and expects you to sit there for tens of hours plugging away at tasks and other bullshit is utterly abysmal. Honestly, this was a tragic shame. Overall, Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed earns a 1.4 out of 10. Finally, Dead by Daylight. I think that Dead by Daylight is the most fun here. It has a toxic community, but so do most games, and as a console player, I'm shielded from a lot of that. Sometimes you'll find a killer you like or a survivor you like. Some killers hate playing survivor and vice versa. Modes keep it interesting, and you can play some really funny builds if you're confident. I love this game and have spent thousands of hours on it. I'd give it a 7 to account for the fact that it's not everyone's cup of tea at all. As for horror, I give it a 2. It's not scary on either side, and it has long since given up trying to be. The occasional jump scare of a ghost face is all that makes up for it, unfortunately. Dredge does give me the willies, but I never see dredges since the nerf. For the live service factor, I'd award a 10. Dead by Daylight is truly a live service, a constant delivery of things to do, earn and buy. Cosmetics can be grinded for with in-game currency, only a few of them are cash only, even paid for killers and survivors become available at intervals so you can try different ones for free and see what you think of them. The Rift Pass feels chock full of stuff to earn across loads of characters, so you end up with only a few outfits per character, meaning that you cycle through them rather than having a ton of stuff you don't use and eventually forget about. The team is communicative and loves all the memes and stuff that people make, like it feels like a community. With that comes long-term playability. I feel like my time is rewarded. I'm not sweeping in either side of things, so I know I have a long way to go and ways to improve. There are always new perks out to learn, new killers to play against, new survivors to try, changes to the meta that suck or work well. I could go on. I like this game, I never get bored, there's always something new to do. So for that, I'd give it a 7. Finally, grind and time-wasting manipulation encourage you to stay in the game, and we get a 5 here. Dead by Daylight has found a good balance where I don't feel like keys are being jingled in my face, I don't feel like I'm being exploited too often to encourage staying in a game, but Dead by Daylight can't score too high because of their FOMO tactics, and the fact that they still resort to daily and weekly tasks, which end up being asinine. I like their attempts at seasonal events though. The fact that I forget about my selected challenges is probably an indication of my feelings on this as a whole. The game is fun enough to play on its own back, and I don't spend too much time worrying about challenges and unlocks and XP. Overall, Dead by Daylight scores a 6.2. I think the most striking thing about these averages is that the highest score here is a 6.2. Obviously, this is my scoring system, and I'm one of those people who tries to resist giving anything a 10, which is so often the norm in gaming discussions where people seem to think 8 is average and expected, and 10 means I had fun with this game. At that point, you may as well do a 3-star system. If any of you are sitting in the comments like, I'd give Trials a 10, Phasmophobia a 9.5, Dead by Daylight a 9.7, and Ghostbusters a pathetic 9.1, I'm sorry everyone, I know that's really harsh, then I hope you never find peace. because that really annoys me. That aside, even games I think do this well, like Dead by Daylight, fall afoul of so many issues that currently plague live service games because they're fundamentally at odds with gaming expectations, especially horror games. Dead by Daylight began quite horror focused and has since pivoted away from that, which a lot of the community mourn, and for a horror game to go live service is just to obliterate so much of that fear in one fell swoop. So if you have nothing to fall into place in its stead, then you're just handing players a huge waste of time. The award for Has It Together at least goes to Dead by Daylight, which is an acquired taste but at least has a complete game that's seen good success as a live service model, hitting an all-time peak earlier this year with the release of the much-awaited Springtrap DLC. I think Dead by Daylight does what it does competently, it's found its rhythm, it's fairly unique, and it has a thriving, cultivated community of people who might be the whiniest bastards on the planet. As far as I'm concerned, that'll do me just fine. I just wish it was more accessible for new players. It's like learning how to drive by getting run over 3 times a day. The award for Great Idea, Bad Execution goes to Phasmophobia. I feel like mateship integrations happen more often than actual tangible updates to this unfinished game that can't even begin adding cool bells and whistles because they've not even finished ideating on the final product, with a profit equaling the entire development budget of the whole Uncharted series 5 times over. A few years ago, Phasmophobia was a brilliant idea that blew up in the right place at the right time. Now it just feels like that one unemployed mate who keeps telling you he's going to be a Premier League footballer any day now, except you're both 29 and he's not touched a football in 13 years. The award for You Miss Every Shot You Don't Take and All the Ones You Do goes to Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, the management of which saw a sweet concept brutally disemboweled and stretched the length of a football field, a development and business risk that paid off in no shape or form, resulting in its premature death as a live service within 2 years of release. It's a shame to see it die so fast, but it was an even greater shame to see a beloved franchise twisted into some cynical, desperate time waste and live service shambles. That's what you get for your hubris. And finally, the award for, as long as you're happy, goes to Outlast Trials, for which I mourn the Outlast series to date and their pivot, but respect the decisions of these people to make what they're happy making. I haven't enjoyed this game much at all due to its shallow, repetitive gameplay and total lack of scares. I played a few too many live service games to be sucked into this one. Every new Prime asset offers so little difference to gameplay, except the Jaeger, which I found fun enough. Every rotating event is basically the same thing with minor changes, and every level is fundamentally unmemorable. If you like this, good for you, but I just didn't see any value. Overall, I don't think the problem with live service games is the gameplay or even the monetization, but rather the insistence on gaming companies to get as much as possible in exchange for delivering as little as possible. Dead by Daylight's developers have a broad reputation for not playing the very game they make, leading to things like absurd tweaks to characters, usually nerfs applied to the weakest characters in the game, but most importantly leading to major problems with the game never being addressed and developers often turning around and just telling players that they don't exist or that they're completely intentional. There's a lot of easy wins that the Dead by Daylight developers could have, but they very obviously don't play the game that they make, so they miss out on a lot of stuff that would make the community very happy. Ghostbusters ended up being, well, it ended up being what it ended up being. Phasmophobia continues to shout promises down at us from a pile of gold that never see the light of day in any meaningful way, and Outlast Trials takes a premise that could be fun for some people and then tries to stretch that out way further than the majority of their player base are going to find any use engaging with. I know a lot of people hate things like paid-for skins, loot boxes and battle passes, but they're not my gripe. I don't mind tossing a tenner into a game every few months if I'm enjoying it and playing it. I like games with shorter gameplay loops I can dip in and out of and play without needing much energy. Sports games have been doing it for years. It's what FPSs are built on. There's nothing wrong with taking a gameplay mechanic, refining and engaging it, and turning it into a match-paced game to be played with friends, optionally with ranking systems, unlocks and skill trees. For me, it's the cynical entitlement to my time that winds me up. Why do companies feel like every game needs to be an eternal prison these days? What happened to the idea of a fun 10-hour romp? Something to play, enjoy, remember and move on from? Why does everything need to be stretched to infinity with the assumption that I should be plugging money back into its ecosystem constantly? Games that give me a shallow gameplay loop and expect to keep my attention indefinitely with daily tasks like jingling keys in my face. This laziness to make a story and structure, instead just drop their players into a match and have them complete a basic gameplay loop over and over again, when said gameplay loop is not enough to carry it. Giving me a catalogue that takes tens of hours to complete, and to assume that should be my incentive to play. to grind. To grind for what? T-shirts? Hair colours? Skins for characters I don't play? To then take that and add a thin veneer of horror onto it, some wallpaper with a ghost on it you'll end up running past 400 times? If it's built on good foundations, it might find a loyal but niche player base, but if you don't have a good idea in the first place, you will never last long enough as a company to release another content update with a second ghost on the wall.